get started. This is the Plan Use Committee, September 9th. And let's have our roll call.
Chair T.
Here.
Maria Vieira.
Present.
Trina McKeever.
Here.
Stephen Chesler.
Here.
Aaron Drinkwater. Moisha Indig. Bozetta Kaminsky. Abraham Leibovitz. Sante Michelli. Rabbi Niederman. Karen Nieves. Isaac Sofer. Robert Solano.
Here.
Who is that?
Rob Solano.
Okay.
William Vega.
Here.
Stephen Weidberg. Simon Weiser. Michael
Jerry?
Andrews. I have you, but I have you marked
You have
present.
me?
Ms.
Okay.
Evans. Thank you.
Michael Andrews
Thank
is
you.
Michael Andrews is present. Keith Berger.
here.
Corey Canton.
Here.
Michael Kowachka.
Here.
Thank you. Kate Naplatarsky.
Here.
Thank you, Katie. Allison Stone.
Here.
Allison.
Here.
Thank you. $13 members present at the time.
Okay, so first on the agenda is this announcement that 1 White Avenue special permit application will be heard and voted on at the full board meeting on September 14th, 2021. And in relationship to that, Richard Barrick is here from the Borough President's office, and he has an announcement to make. Derek, can he just speak, or do you have to let him in?
Sure. So we're going to do a public hearing on September 27th. There'll be 3 items from Community Board 1 and District 1 as well. So it will be the Wythe Project, the 79 Quay, and the River Ring. It will be on September 27th, starting at 6, and we're back to all virtual public hearings. And people do not necessarily need to testify in person. They could also, electronically that evening, they could also submit emails to askeric@brooklynbp.nyc.gov. And it can be in advance and it can be after the hearing as well.
Thank you, Richard.
Dal, can I just mention that Senator Kavanaugh is in the meeting right now, and I know that he's here specifically to talk about 1 South First. Is there any way we can just adjust the agenda so that he doesn't have to wait till we get to that point?
Sure. You're saying 1 South First?
Well, with regards to River Ring, it's the 2 trees.
With regard to River Ring. Sure. If the senator would like to speak, sure.
Hi, I actually had been invited to, be available to answer questions and comments. So I don't have any, prepared remarks for all of you, but I can stay on for a bit. The magic of Zoom is you can be at your office, and so I'll be here. I can stay. I do have one other event that I have to get to in person, but I'll be around for a bit.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Okay, the next item will be, I've switched the order. So the next item will be 79 Quay Street and an application for a zoning map amendment. So do we have, are the presenters ready?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
Okay,
Do I have permission to share my screen? Do I need permission?
that's a question for Jerry to answer.
Well, let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes,
Okay, perfect. Richard?
Sure, thank you. Good evening, Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel PC for the applicant. Fayenne Baton from my office will be sharing her screen. And just because I know there's some phone numbers and I want to make sure that the appropriate personnel are here. Kevin Williams from Equity Environmental, our environmental consultant is here as well. I believe Steve Wygoda from SWA Architecture is on. Is that correct, Steve? Are you there?
I'm here, Richard.
Okay, great. The applicant, Harry Einhorn, I believe is on as well. Harry, are you on the phone? Okay. I don't have Harry, but regardless, we know that our timing is tight, so we're gonna go through the rezoning. Hopefully Harry can join. Regardless, we can answer any questions about the proposal. So what you see before you is the 79 Quay Street rezoning. This is block 2589 on the corner of Quay and West Streets.
This is Harry Einon. I'm here.
Oh, thank you, Harry. Good to hear your voice. So the
I was
rezoning would
muted, so you
rezone.
couldn't hear me, but okay.
Understood. So the rezoning you can see in the circled area is currently located within an MX8 district, which pairs an R6A district with an M12 district. So this would currently permit a 3 FAR 3.6 with affordability. It's paired with an M12 district, which would allow for 2 commercial FAR. As you can see from the hashed area, and more specifically within the dotted area, what we are proposing is for an M14 R7D. That M14 R7D would result in a 9-story building. This was the subject of much discussion early on in the proposal, because despite the fact that the R7D district permits for 11 to 12 stories, we were able to provide for an envelope which allowed for this entire building within a 9-story envelope. And so what happens really is that the unit sizes, as Steve can discuss later at the chair's discretion, become somewhat more generous. So we get larger units, important for the affordable units, and we just think we have a better development. Next slide. So you can see from the land use map that there's some important aspects of the current map to note. To the west of the area along the waterfront, of course, is the R8 district and is paired also with R6 districts. These are non-contextual districts which permit very high heights, with the understanding that within the next several years, there are plans on file with the Department of Buildings which will result in buildings ranging from 14 and 19 stories to 33 stories to the west. So while we have this tall area to the west of us, to the east of us, we've got an R6B, which is generally allows for building heights of roughly 6 stories. When we approached city planning with this application, the idea was to allow for a transition zone, the R7D, which would kind of result in a decrease in the heights from the 14 to 33 story heights along the waterfront, and allow us what would be a very modest 9 stories in height. Further, I would note that the existing R7 or the R6A district permits 75 feet in height. So the building would actually only exceed the current zoning by roughly 2 stories. In addition, you can see that we're adjacent to some manufacturing districts, M15 and M12 districts, all of which permit 2 FAR in the case of the M12 to 5 FAR in the case of the M15. So you really get some higher FARs in the area. Next slide. This is a proposed zoning map change. Again, you can see that the M14 R7D would now be mapped along Quay Street, traveling east from West Street. The rezoning would affect our parcel as well as parts of 2 parcels. The parcel adjacent to us, which already has approved plans and from my understanding has started construction on a project. And then there would be a minor portion, only a few linear feet of the 3rd parcel, which would remain unchanged. So really, this rezoning affects our parcel, although the district on these other 2 parcels would be affected. Next slide. So with this, we just show pictures of the area as well as the property. Currently, you have a modest manufacturing building with commercial uses in it. I think Fan, if you want to page through some of the photos, you just get a taste of what's in the area. Of course, everyone's familiar with West Street in this area. City planning was excited for us to proceed with this proposal in not only producing a residential building with 86 units, of which roughly 22 to 26 would be permanently affordable, which is of course one of the goals of MIH, but this would also allow for the addition of roughly 10,000 square feet of commercial use along Quay in this area, which would, is seen as being kind of a transition street as it leads to the waterfront. So the idea of having kind of a lively commercial frontage here, as opposed to the existing longstanding warehouse construction, was seen to be beneficial. And of course, as the committee knows, but to repeat, this would be an area where mandatory inclusionary housing would be mapped on the district so that any residential development going forward would carry with it a requirement of 25 to 30% of the units. With that, I would turn this over to Steve Wygoda for a very brief discussion of the architecture behind the project, and then we're happy to answer any questions regarding land use or program or anything. Steve?
Richard, just,
Sure.
Could you just repeat how many units and how many will be affordable?
Sure. Currently, as proposed, there would be 86 units. Of those units, either depending on whether option 1 or option 2 was adopted, with option 1, 22 of those units would be affordable. With option 2, 26 of those units would be affordable. So, oh wait, Fan, I got that right? Yeah, I got that right.
And what
Thank you.
AMIs?
Okay. Steve, if you want to quickly run through the plans, that'd be great.
I mean, we're, because we're near a high water table, we've elevated the building above as required. And then we're gonna have some retail and parking at that slightly higher level. We created some greenery along Quay, so as to make that transition to the waterfront more pleasant. And we intend to, build this really wonderful new building, as you can see, and kind of change the look of that area. Aside from that, 86 units. The counts are the counts. There's a 3D model looking down on it, and I'm open to questions. I don't know what else I should be saying.
I think that's fine. So running quickly through the plans, the cellar level would offer parking spaces. The commercial use of the ground floor would amount to 10,000 square feet, as well as a residential lobby with floors 2 through 9 above, offering residential units. Again, while the building is substantially similar to what could be built in a lower density district, what this did allow us to do was really kind of spread the floor area out towards the rear of the building. There was a lot of work done on the front end to design this so that particularly we could get larger units as part of the development and benefit more from, instead of studios and ones and twos and 3 bedrooms. So, we were really kind of happy with that design aspect of it, the ability to add additional FAR, which essentially results in more generous unit sizes. And the way that affordable housing works and mandatory inclusionary housing works is that you don't just get larger unit sizes for the market rate units, you get them for the affordable units as well, because the affordable units are interspersed through the building at the same sizes and at the, just at a different proportion than the market rate units. So they're interspersed throughout the floors. They're interspersed also throughout the unit types in the form of 1s and 2s and 3s. So again, that's essentially the presentation, and we're happy to answer any specific questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
I have two. One is, so as of right, what would the fully built out, what would the height been, or what would the height be? And then number 2, what are the AMI levels for the 2 affordable housing options?
Sure. So with regards to as of right, given the R6A envelope, the height would go to 75 feet with a qualifying ground floor commercial. That would be in the form of a 7-story building. The R7A, which is one district below this district, would permit a height of 95 feet. The proposed R7D, while permitting heights of up to 115 feet, can actually be accomplished here in 9 stories. I think with the addition of rooftop mechanicals, it would go to a height of roughly 100 feet, so there'd be about 5 feet in additional height. But again, that would result in a 9-story building.
Okay, and then what are the AMI levels for the 2 options of affordable housing?
I'm going to defer to Fayan if I can put you on the spot. Are you able to call up the affordability levels for the 2, option 1, option 2? Thank you. So pursuant to HPD published guidelines for 2021, given option 1, the 60% AMI level would run through $50,000 for a studio up through $71,000 for a 3-bedroom. So those would be the AMI levels. And again, that's a range. So there would be, while some would be at up to 80% AMI, there would also be 40% AMI. So 10% of the units in the building would be at 40% AMI. Those AMIs would result in units of AMIs of 33,000 for studios, 47,000 for a 3-bedroom. So the option 1 carries with it a mandatory 10% at 40% AMI.
I'm sorry, one more follow-up question. With the as of right, you potentially could utilize inclusionary housing to get a density bonus. And if so, but it would not be permanent affordable housing. Is that
That's
correct?
absolutely correct, Steve. Yes. So one of the benefits, of course, of rezoning the property with MIH is that the rezoned property requires mandatory inclusionary housing for the life of the building. So it's permanent affordability. And again, given the current regulations, half of those affordable units would be for residents of Community Board 1.
You can still do that? I thought there was litigation that may kill that.
Yeah, I think it's still pending. So if we get this through quickly enough, we still get to take advantage of that. But you are correct. There is current litigation, but right now we're still able to benefit from that.
Bell, you hear me? Simon?
Can I ask a question?
Looks like Dell was disconnected.
Katie, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. So it was hard for me to read the chart had up. So I'm wondering, what would the actual rental amount be for example, for a 2-bedroom apartment? Because I couldn't read that.
Sure.
Then I have 2 other questions.
Okay, we'll start with that. So the HPD guidelines, similar to the AMI levels, also address rentals and the rental rates. So for 60% AMI, which is the average rental price, studios would be $956, 1-bedrooms would be $1,204, 2-bedrooms would be $1,437, and 3-bedrooms would be $1,653. Of the 25% affordable requirement, 10% would be required to be at 40% AMI. So there are units which would be offered at $598 for a studio, $756 for a 1-bedroom, $900 for a 2-bedroom, and $1,032 for a 3-bedroom. So as you can see, the mandatory inclusionary housing guidelines allow for portions of the building to really generate some deep affordability.
Okay, and I have another question. I'm wondering if your design, if you're wed to that design, if that's the final design. You said to really change the look of the area. And to me, even though this isn't something which is part of, the approval process, it just seems really quite out of context. It looks a little bit like a hotel to me. Aesthetically, from the rendering, do not find it in context with the rest of the neighborhood.
So Katie,
that's
I appreciate the comment. We've got Harry on as well as Steve Wygoda, the architect. And I will tell you that just as a matter of course, in most of these applications, when there is a discussion with the community board, there's often a discussion about aesthetics and the looks of the building. And during the course of the application, this often changes. So while, I guess Steve and Harry can speak to that more directly, but to the extent that the committee weighs in on aesthetics that would be, more desirable for the area, like I'm more than happy to take those suggestions. Harry and Steve can weigh in on that as well. But, there's no reason not to be in agreement on design, given the fact that, this area has a long and wonderful history, and we'd be happy to comply with that. Steve and Harry, can you confirm that?
Yes. And of course, we'll make something that fits in the area that's going to be across the street. They're going to have a couple of buildings and try and come up something nice.
Okay. So,
This is Del Teague. Can anybody hear me? Hello?
yes, Del.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, because I got knocked off, so I'm on my phone right now. And my husband is trying to get me on the computer.
You hear me, Simon?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, thank you.
And Del, I'm here too. I don't know if you could hear me. I had trouble getting on.
Karen.
Sorry.
So unfortunately, I missed some of the conversation, and I'm sorry, but I was knocked off on the computer.
Del, just to recap the last two comments, we went over the affordability levels, both in terms of the AMIs offered in the building, as well as the rental rates. And there was a discussion around the aesthetics. Katie mentioned that from design purposes, we could probably do something a little more contextual. And Harry, who's on the phone with us, the applicant, agreed, and we're happy to take those comments from the committee.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question, Del? Is the size of the rezoning just the footprint of the property, or is city planning planning to rezone more of that block?
Sure. So Fan, are you able to just put up the area map? So you can see from the map, this Fan is going to call it up, that there's three properties. There's three properties that are affected by the rezoning. There's our lot, which is lot 1.
Red.
Which is the corner lot in red, correct. There's lot 23, which is adjacent to us. I've spoken to the owner and their architect. They already have a building in progress, but they did express that they were happy to support the rezoning. They won't actually materially benefit from the rezoning, but they thought that contextually it was appropriate, and the architect, Gary Silver, is a longstanding architect, does a lot of projects, and said that they'd be happy to speak in favor. The only other lot that's affected, you can see a corner of this other lot. Fan's putting the cursor on it right now. It's kind of a minuscule corner. You can see it on the upper right. That would have no effect on that building. So it's really, it really amounts to, as far as development sites go, our lot and this adjacent lot, which is already being developed.
And just to add that it matches the current boundary of the R6A district. So this line actually currently exists.
Right. Thank you.
And that line is through the lot that's adjacent?
Correct.
How it is currently mapped as well, yes.
I think I'm in again on my computer, so I'm going to check.
I had a couple questions, Katie. Wanted to make sure you didn't have any others though before I jump in.
Yeah, no, I don't have any others except just to say thank you for being willing to have design which people in the neighborhood, some people might be happy with. And can we get back to you about that then?
Yeah,
Perhaps?
absolutely. I think we would take any recommendations, preferably if there was a writing from the committee, it would be helpful.
Okay.
And just having worked on a number of these rezonings, I just feel like it's something where if it's an as of right building, you don't necessarily have that conversation. But here, having worked with Harry and Steve before, we're really happy to have those recommendations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Does
Does
anyone
anyone have any other questions?
or comments?
I did, Del. I was waiting for Keith, but
I'm sorry.
if I can-
I do. I thought I was off mute, but I muted myself just to make sure you didn't hear background noise. So, and I was sorry, I was speaking. I didn't realize you couldn't hear me. So you spoke a little bit to this, but I'd like to get into a little bit more detail on the mix of the affordable in terms of size of apartments. I mean, I think that we appreciate that, there's a real need for family housing in the neighborhood. So do you have a sense yet of the mix of what that affordable is going to look like in terms of studios versus 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms? Is question number one. And then second, outside of have you thought about maybe going beyond the 25% or other community benefits that you could offer? I think there's a real kind of rezoning fatigue at some level in the neighborhood, and making sure we get a little bit more out of the community, and the lack of a real plan by city planning and these kind of one-off requests. And I think at least I am focusing a lot more on the community benefit of these rezonings. I just wanted to see if you've thought about other things, maybe beyond just affordability, that you might be willing to consider that might be considered a community benefit.
Sure. So just to start with the apartment mix, you can see in the lower right of the screen that's posted the apartment mix chart. So one of the reasons this was a very attractive rezoning for us and for city planning was because of the ability to create a really nice number of 13-bedroom units. So despite the fact that this exceeds the requirements, so the mandatory inclusionary housing guidelines actually have requirements as far as unit sizes, and despite the fact that this exceeds those requirements, the understanding between city planning and the applicant was that allowing for the R7D here allows you to get these larger units. So we've got 13 studios, 21 1-bedrooms, 29 2-bedrooms, and 13 3-bedrooms. To the extent that those represent, and we're just going to go with rough numbers here, let's say out of 86 units, you've got, let's say 15% studios, 15% 3-bedrooms, and then 30% each 1-bedrooms and 2-bedrooms. The affordable units would also reflect that same proportion. So in order to prevent an applicant from loading up the affordable units with studios and 1-bedrooms, the same proportion of units in the building for the market rate units have to be maintained for the affordability. So the affordable units here would, again, roughly number 15% of those affordable units would be studios, 30% 1-bedrooms, 30% 2-bedrooms, and 15% 3-bedrooms. And those are, sorry, actually 20%, my math was off, 20% studio, 1-bedrooms, 30%, 2-bedrooms, 30%, and 20% 3-bedrooms. So it actually results in there's some really nice affordable units that are being created for 3-bedroom units, which are units which, may not otherwise be able to be rented for, you saw the rental rates for $1,100. It's really, we're really happy to be part of that program. With regards to amenities, I think I'm sympathetic with rezoning fatigue. This project doesn't really have public space or open space for those, for those type of amenities. While we do larger scale rezonings, the rezoning here only is on a 13,000 square foot lot. So in the event that we have larger rezonings where we've got lot sizes of 25, 30,000, we're oftentimes able to generate some open space and maybe, provide that for the area. Here, while we're happy with the building amenities themselves and open space which we're creating for the tenants, as well as, parking and bike parking for the tenants, we weren't really able to come up with any, really good amenity space for, for kind of public consumption. So again, we get it. We're happy to create the affordability we're creating. But as far as like open space or public open space, we just didn't really have the lot area for it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Corey, I think you wanted to ask some questions.
Did. Thank you, Del. Richard, the first question was, do you have an idea of what the market rents that you'll be offering are?
Harry and I talked about this earlier today. Harry, I don't know whether or not I know Harry was talking to some advisors as far as rental incomes. I know the discussion was whatever the market rate is for apartments in the area. Harry, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to drill down and are there any specific numbers or no?
No, not yet. We
Okay.
talk to the brokers, what they say it goes. I don't know.
Right. So we have specific.
Usually we hire a team to see what they say they get in the area usually.
Yeah. So while we're able to answer with specificity on the affordable units, the market rate units are, we don't have that information yet. I mean, the truth is that the rezoning's been in process for at least a couple of years. And oftentimes we don't really have those conversations with brokers until it becomes more certain that the rezoning is going to go through. So, it's whatever the market rate units would be in the area. But again, we've got hard numbers on the affordable units, but not so on the market rate.
Got it. Yeah, I think just to preface why I asked, because I really look at affordability of a building kind of as a mix between not just what the affordable units are, but also, what the market rates unit do to the market. And then if there's any room for more affordability because of, higher rents. And I recognize you don't know what the market will be 2 years from now, but just to kind of understand the context of what affordability kind of means, at least to me. And then one more question. Are there any green elements to the building? So considering the Climate Mobilization Act, is there a green roof or other mechanicals that you have chosen to use that, would have less impact on our environment?
Yeah, I defer to Steve Wygoda, who I know, being fairly active has done a lot of green buildings. So Steve, could you talk a little bit about the sustainability measures in the building?
Sure. We're looking at a green roof, and we've also worked with city planning about doing some greenery along the street. You could see that in the rendering, and then screening off any of the mechanical equipment, so you're not looking at that kind of feature. And I just want to just squeeze in hello to Rob Solano, my friend.
Hi, Rob.
Probably not the best thing to do for Rob, but that's okay.
Okay.
I know there's also been some conversation, and obviously as we go through our hearings, one of the things that, especially in light of current hurricane activity, is stormwater retention. And I know Steve's done that on a number of buildings. We talked about it in this building. There was a little bit of a question from Steve's standpoint. He had not yet looked into, tying into the sewer system and what demands there would be. But I know that was another option for being able to provide that in the building.
Correct.
I think in general, and I'm not a sustainability expert, but I think that, whenever you're essentially making something larger in concrete, it would be important to, I think the rest of the community board as well, to know what measures you're taking to, have a greener choices within the project. So anything that, any further choices that you can make at this stage, I think would be important.
Yeah, one add-on. Have you considered like solar on the roof or anything to help mitigate carbon footprint in addition to the green roof?
We will consider that, and as part of the development of the project.
There's also a carbon absorbing concrete that could be used in construction.
And do thermal heat loops for heating instead of using gas.
My thesis at City College was solar energy a long time ago, and I'm very open to it. I've studied quite a lot of recyclable, sustainable products, materials, uses. So as much of that as we can fit into this project, we will.
Del, could I ask one additional question?
Sure.
I know that you showed it renderings of the trees that you're planning to put on the property or on the sidewalk, and that you mentioned that there isn't space for any kind of community open space within the footprint of the project. But a block away from there is Bushwick in the Park, which the community has been longing to have built and is pushing the city to build. Would you ever consider making some sort of a substantial donation to the build out of Bushwick in the Park, seeing as you don't have open space on the footprint of your property to offer to the community?
Richie, that's a Harry question, perhaps. And
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I would just say as an aside, that we've had projects recently where the Environmental Review Division at City Planning, as well as the Department of Parks, weighs in and they look at the aggregate open space, particularly depending on the size of the project. And in some occasions, they will actually say to us, you really need to insert more open space into the development site. They did not do so here. I think one of the things they looked at was a lot of the public open space in the area, and just specifically with regards to this rezoning and the surrounding 500 feet. But again, Harry's on the phone, and to the extent that he can discuss potentially making a offsetting contribution, I'm going to leave that to him.
I mean, certain times that the parks department will ask if you don't want to plant the trees. They ask you to put in money for certain places. It all depends on the parks department. As you go along, you ask them how they want to do it. Sometimes they're required to do it by you. Certain times they'll say contribute some money. So we work whatever they say.
So let me just clarify. This is Del Teague. The question is whether you would be willing to commit to a donation to the park. We understand that the city planning and the park has not requested it of you or required it of you. However, this community board is dealing with the incredible overdevelopment, overcrowding, and we really are hesitant to give rezonings, waivers, whatever, unless we feel that it really is of significant benefit to the community. So, the question is, are you willing to make a contribution, a donation to the park?
Harry, it's basically, as in other cases where there's a commitment, they're asking for a commitment to provide money for parks in the area. It's something that we've done. Say again? No, it's something that
we'll talk to the parks department to see if we should do it in-house park or we should contribute somewhere else, and what they require, what they were looking for. Always when you get an approval, you always got to go through the parks department.
Are you calling the street trees an in-house park?
That is correct.
So I think your answer is no, you're not willing. I don't.
Del, I think Harry.
I didn't say that.
Well,
yeah,
I'd like to give him. I would like to give you the chance to really answer, but we understand that the Parks Department is not requiring this of you. We are asking you if you are willing, on your own, to make a contribution to, specifically to the Bushwick Inlet Park, which is a block away from your development.
We're talking about the new park across the street that they want to do.
Karina?
We're talking about the 8-acre park that's a block from your building site.
Right across the street by the water, right?
Yes. that was zoned in 2005 as part of the rezoning, or it was promised to the community, and the city has yet to be able to build it. As the development grows around it, we're asking developers to consider, and developers who are asking for a rezoning, a change in their zoning, to consider donating to this park.
We would consider that. We got to look into details what they want, but we could consider that.
I'm going to strongly recommend that Harry consider that.
And Harry, the
Right.
Parks Department
Correct.
has
Well, we got to look.
the Parks
Right.
Department has a tree fund. We're not mandated to do that because we can do our own trees, but we can contribute to that and ask them to plant it in the park. So there are different options, Harry, that you should look at when the proper
I
time.
understand. That's what I said. You can look in what they want and see what we can do for them and contribute some money for that. That's correct.
Yeah, that's above and beyond what they require.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Can Dale, can I make some comment too?
Sante, yes, Sante, please. And then we should get to a vote because we have more to do tonight. So yes, Sante.
Well, yeah, hi, Richard. No, I'm not going to make any comment on affordable housing. I believe there is far more knowledgeable fellow member than me. But definitely, I love to make some comment because, there were asked about design, but personally, as a designer myself, I don't see what you are presenting tonight. I mean, I see a volume of the building. Definitely what I do not see is a concept. And everybody has launched some requests, but I believe we have probably what we are missing here. It's a concept which it is conceived with all the things that are being listed tonight as a component, a more sustainable and more resilient building. And today that definitely imply, from green roof, probably more than a green roof, in a sense that we could have a more green building. They are great example. I'm originally Italian. There is a kind of well-known building, all architects know, in Milan, Vertical Forest, which is probably far more bigger than this. This actually is in a size, this building, on a scale which is not too small, it's not too big. That definitely could allow you to do something more interesting for the community. So design-wise, I love to see better rendering. I love to see sustainable system. So that's a technology work. I believe that needs to be done. And I can tell you, because I live a couple blocks away, they are here tonight, other residents that live on Oak Street, and I've been digging out water because I got flooded myself 3 blocks away. I know that the area there is very vulnerable. During the storm, the water table is just 4-inch from basement floor in all the smaller scale buildings. So that's an area that is going to have major issue. So to me, the tree sidewalk, it's already public space. That's the minimum you should do, but I don't see any intervention. You should incorporate green into the facade. You should incorporate green maybe through playing with the volume of the building. It's a great opportunity, I believe, architecturally. I'm not going to enter into the material aspect because there is no information for what you are presenting tonight for us to say what we like or not from a subjective point of view. So those are things, sustainable. And then you've been talking about contributing with a commercial space. And again, I love to see elevation. I love to see section of the building to have better understanding what at the scale of this commercial. And most likely we're talking about retail. You were talking retail, commercial in relation to the waterfront. And I can tell you how the community, and my advice also to do a better outreach also with the Greenpoint Coalition, all the block association and the immediate neighborhood. they are very close and live in very small scale building just on Collier and Oak Street. It would be nice to understand what is the relation with this other portion of the fabric surrounding the building. And yes, so those are other definitely other comments, but definitely on the retail, it'd be nice to see to really have intention to create retail diversity. We have seen in the neighborhood, as a consequence of the large rezoning, a loss of retail diversity, and a mono industry has been taken over, which is bar and restaurant, but you know, we need the bookstore, we need other type of activity. I do understand that they may become more profitable because you can ask for more rent if you're a bar. So will you be willing also to commit to create retail diversity and have smaller space can actually contribute to our neighborhood, to the community?
So to answer all the points that were made, and again, Sante, I appreciate the comments, and you know, while we have a lot of people on the call, you know, the aesthetics are important to us. We would appreciate comments back from the committee, which kind of have some unity and interest to say, even if it's not to design the building specifically, what materials, facade treatment, you know, just general design points so that we can incorporate that. So I think that is a great comment and one that we're happy to take on. I think that the discussion with regards to sustainability measures as well, we can be more specific. It only works to our benefit, not only for the general health of the building, but also as we go through our public hearings, particularly to the Brooklyn Borough President Office. Everyone really wants to know more specifically about sustainability. I think we're happy to add that as well, and we can probably do more to give you guys a little bit of a better understanding of what we would intend to use as far as sustainability in the building. And then with regards to the retail, the only conversation that Harry and I have had, of course, it's too early for us to go out to market, but that Harry was interested in having local retail at the site, smaller retailers who are, you know, kind of more of a neighborhood retail feel. So, so again, to the extent the committee has that suggestion and has recommendations with regards to the type of retail that they would like to see here, I think that's probably the more challenging aspect of it, to be in all honesty, because we don't know what we're going to get yet. But I think that we would be happy to get those comments so that as we move forward, we're able to kind of shape the building a little bit more with regards to program on what you would want to see.
And now to be really the point was very specific. I said we are developing a mono industry because, and this is not the committee to talk about this. Let's say we have a 500-foot law, but it's not enforced by the state, right? So we should have over 3 license within 500 foot. You know, if that law would have been applied, we would have created diversity, but it is not applied for some reason. So I understand. So I'm trying to be creative. What can we do for our community to create a more sustainable neighborhood, a 10 minutes walk neighborhood? And so will you be willing to say, yes, if we do a restaurant, we do 1 restaurant, but the other 10 commercial space, we're gonna dedicate diversity. And definitely you're not gonna have like 10 clothing store for sure, but you know, really that intention. And he's really looking ahead, looking forward.
Harry, I can't speak to you for you, but to the extent that Sante's asking whether or not we can try to rent to different businesses and create some more retail diversity, does that sound like something that would be in line with the program for the building?
Definitely, why not?
Okay. So I think in essence, you know, it's kind of to our advantage as well. So I think it's something we're happy to do.
Right, because not easy to rent out if it's smaller spaces given for different kind.
All right,
Okay.
so we're ready to move on and to have our committee discussion and have a vote.
I just have one question. That's okay.
Okay, sure, Rob.
Just a quick comment, Richard. Right, so I think this was purchased in 2014 for about $3 million with CCM over with Jamie Wiseman Group. And then did you buy it from Jamie Wiseman Group, which is the CCM group, and what was your purchase price? And so if you kind of do that like track record of 3 million, I think it was for 13 million around that time, really, and then nothing's really been done with it. wouldn't the community, let's say you weren't involved, wouldn't the community be better off having the city purchase the lot at 3 million and creating 100% affordable, since really it doesn't really work in this kind of mechanism? But if you could speak to like the purchase point from when you guys jumped in, that would be great to know.
Harry, how long have you owned the property for?
If I remember it, 5, 6 years. I don't remember exactly, but on and about.
Yeah, give it take. Yeah. How much did you buy her for from Jamie?
I think we bought for 12, 10 million. I don't know, 12 million. I don't remember exactly.
It was about 13.4. So Jamie bought it at 3. He waited about 7 years. He
No,
flipped it with
Jamie
you.
backed out. I think Jamie never owned it. He went in a contract, but then
Right.
he found out that some loft tenants,
Yes.
they never closed
Right.
on it because he couldn't do nothing with it.
Right. Okay.
And then
So
we bought it out. We bought it,
at about 13 million, right?
correct?
Okay. Yep.
Del, I actually am getting pinged on my phone. I'm late for a community board 4 Queens meeting, so I may actually just put this on my phone and just listen in. But if to the extent there's more questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, I have to leave.
Yeah, well, I think we have to move on anyway because we have 2 more substantive items to deal with tonight, everybody.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
And committee, let's have our discussion.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
So it seems to me that if there is an interest in approving or not approving, it seems to me a number of conditions were raised, many relating to, by the way, before I forget, I saw that Lincoln Russell was here, so I just want to acknowledge Lincoln. The sustainability and the greening and the green aspects, it's clear that people are interested in having more of that. Again, also outreach with respect to retail and having a sense of what we would like to see in the for a diverse retail component. Let's see, what else might there have been? I may have missed some stuff. Remember, I got knocked off.
When you got knocked off, Del, we had asked them for a more contextual design rather than the design that they had.
Okay,
that
so
they presented.
contextual design.
And just-
I'm just going to mention that, and then now let's have a discussion whether we want to. Obviously, there are conditions that people in the committee are interested in. Of course, the ultimate question is, do we vote to approve with these conditions, or are we not approving? So let's hear what everybody has to say.
This is Steve. I'm slightly in favor of it because though it's it's 20 feet taller than the as of right build, you get permanent affordable housing. They're required to have, 2-bedroom units and bigger, and distributed throughout the building. And just so people know, the 33 Franklin development that's going up as of right is going to be 7 stories, and it has that current style of architecture. So that's and I support all the conditions. I would just say to the greening, like specifically mention sourcing their energy from non-fossil fuel sources.
I agree a lot with what Steve just said. I think, I've been looking at rezonings really in terms of what is it now and what can it be, and the way Steve just framed it, if it's only 2 stories higher that they're asking for and they can do residential currently without permanent affordability, then sort of the difference in that, there is a gain that we receive. I think that within that, obviously sustainability, but if it were that we were able to put a donation to Bushwick and that park, that would be of value. So I think just looking at this in terms of what we currently have and what we could get, if we could sweeten this to provide meaningful outdoor space along with it, then I could be in favor of it. But I do think it's about the conditions.
So if we are asking for a building to be more contextual, what kinds of specific, do you have any specific thoughts in mind?
Katie, you were the one that brought it up. What would you say?
Oh gosh, okay. Well, it's hard to say that without getting into personal bias, I guess, but just to look around at what the area architecture is, including the residential and the old industrial, and to find something that either matches or complements that in terms of structure and material. I guess that's a good way to put it. I think that does not look hotel-like.
The architect, when he talked about it, he said he was out to change the look. I mean, he actually said that. And so maybe instead of, we could reference that we don't want him to change the look, we want him to look at the context and build something more in keeping with the neighborhood.
That we'd like the existing building. It's too bad they can't retain the existing building and somehow work, off of that.
But I think to be more specific, it's the materials really that are used because it's pretty silver, so it's a metallic as compared to bricks or, more of a concrete kind of industrial aesthetic.
It's also very, very horizontal lines, which makes it feel hotel-like. But yes, the materials the materials and the chrome makes it feel kind of out of context, I think.
So I would say that we, if we approve it and if that is a condition, I think that at this point they wouldn't be coming back to us, but I do trust that the borough president's office would then look at this, and hopefully the borough president's office would expect more specifics from them with respect to how they have complied with this condition. I will say that it seems to me that the borough president's office has been responsive to our concerns and our conditions. So I think that's where that would lie if we did this. Now, what about if we ask for a donation for the park? Do we have any kind of any sense of how much we would want, or just a good faith donation to the park?
Well, I think just looking at the scale of the project, that considering something in scale in sync with that, more maybe towards maintenance and programming, or very specific part of the existing park, or then there's 2 sections that are coming online soon, towards gardens or play equipment, or and I don't have a specific dollar amount in mind, but it's something can be negotiated, with parks and FBIP and,
So just a question or a suggestion about like park donation stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody likes to build playgrounds and, have a ribbon cutting ceremony, but then there's no money to maintain it a year later. So, should we recommend more of an annuity thing, like an operational donation, like X dollars per year for 10 years or something like that? Just an idea, so we don't have like a playground that looks good for a year and then rusts out. So
right.
I actually like that, Michael. I think that one of the things we've seen in our area is we build the park and then parks can't maintain it. And so I think operating, maintenance, is important. Frankly, hard to see too many donations actually going to the building of the park, given the significant size of the capital plan that would be required. But I think, some estimate around, 1-2 months operation, something like that. I don't know, something reasonable like that could be something to think about for these kinds of projects.
So do we want to try to come up with a dollar amount?
Is it possible to put it as a percentage of profit?
We can put anything we want. I know that in the past we have asked parks to get involved. We have asked that a developer make a commitment and that they work with the Parks Department and negotiate what the Parks Department felt was fair. That we've done that. But we can do anything we want. We can make any conditions we want, and then hope that the borough president and the city council and the mayor will either go along with it or at least adopt what we are.
How about a substantial long-term commitment to the maintenance of Bushwick Inlet Park, and then take it from
Yeah,
there?
to be negotiated with the Parks Department and local park groups or something like that.
Long term, 10 years, 20 years?
50 years. I don't know.
In perpetuity?
I think.
For as long as they rent the apartments?
What constitutes substantial? I think I like the idea of a percentage, like an overhead on the revenue.
I agree with that. I think leaving it vague, they'll say $100. Congrats.
So what do we want? We can say anything we want.
That's a good one.
They'll take us seriously.
A good one.
Well, parks worker is roughly $80,000 a year for a maintenance or a gardener. So.
I mean, it gets a little bit complicated, but I think if we can go back to how many market rate units, and then think back to more or less what, there's two ways of looking at it in terms of the bonus that we're giving in the addition to the 2 stories. So just in terms of justifying this request, but then also, something in my mind, less around 5% or less seems to be, reasonable. But I think that we'd have to kind of look at how much profit they're able to gain, and obviously sustain the request in order for this to be taken seriously and passed through.
So what are you thinking, Corey?
I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but something in the, let's say, 3% range
3% of what?
of their profit annual.
Of their net profit on the affordables, of the net profit overall?
Or in revenue.
Market
On
rate.
revenue.
I mean, I think to some degree the city can probably help.
Well, we have to make a recommendation tonight because this is on a clock.
Del,
and voted on next week by the community board.
Right, Del, in the chat, Janice Malecki, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing, said they want 2 stories of free real estate they did not pay for. What's the value of that? That's how much should be donated.
Does she have a number in mind?
No, I guess, what is the value of the 2 stories?
Well, we don't know that, do we? So, I mean, let's be real here. We have 2 more very large items to deal with tonight. So please forgive me if you feel I'm rushing you. And if you all decide that you do want to stay here past midnight, then let me know and I will. But I know you don't. So let's try to come up with something a little bit that we can that's a bit more, concrete here.
I'm not sure they're getting 2 free stories. I mean, they got to build it. That costs money. So that's a slippery slope, and we want to be taken seriously.
Yeah, really. Thank you.
We could just say substantial to be negotiated and leave it for people down the line to.
We've done this before where the Parks Department has then entered into negotiations with the developer. I'm not saying that's what we have to do. I'm just saying it is an option.
Without knowing the financials, how can we come up with a specific number?
I don't know.
I mean, I think we could guess if we had more time, but I guess in servicing this moment, you know, I think Katie Horitz has a pretty good idea too in terms of an initial endowment, you know, and so will they have a specific amount we're coming up with now, and then you know, sort of installments on that would be another option. So
give us what you think. Just what is it that
I mean, I would defer probably to Steve in terms of Bushwick and Let Park's needs to some degree, but you know, I was thinking of it more in terms of percentage of profit. So I have to bow out to say I can't say specifically without doing more research.
But what about gross profit? What about gross profit?
Well, my concern is when you start talking about a percentage of profit, that's kind of
Books are slippery.
It's very slippery because what is profit? It's look, as an attorney, I'll tell you that can go on for, I mean, forever and ever and ever.
Well, 500,000, 750,000. Let's.
Or we could do maybe 750 and then, you know, 20,000 a year thereafter, you know, for the next whatever 10 or 20 years.
Del, can I say something?
Sure.
I don't like this whole idea because this park is not adjacent to the property. I mean, we should look at the merit of the rezoning. I'm not saying up or down. We're sitting here, we're telling a developer to donate this money, that money. I don't think this is fair. This is not the situation today. If this park would be adjacent to the property, that's one thing. That's we've in the past asked for some kind of upkeeping or something. But this park is nowhere in the property. I don't think this. We shouldn't be even discussing this. We should be to look at the merit of the situation and vote on the merit, not on the donating. We should be busy donating.
Yeah, but here's the issue with that, right? We look at all of these rezoning requests one by one.
We should do that. I'm telling you right now, we will decide. They're asking us to give them something, and we can ask for what we want to ask for, and then the city can go on and decide what they want to do. We've done it before. We've asked developers to get involved in things outside of their specific development before, and if the majority of the committee wants to ask for commitment to donate to the maintenance of the park, we can ask for it. And Simon feels it's not fair that we shouldn't burden the developer with that. So, you know, we'll take a vote.
Dale, can I say something? You know, definitely, I believe for sure, and I live in the neighbor like Steve Chesler and Trina, definitely every time there is a building and there is an increase in density and there is no park, because the only park we have available is Transmitter Park. And I agree with you, Simon, because I'm actually conceptually and ideologically, I'm against the idea. This may be a very American idea that we need to contribute. I wish the Parks Department would have a system where it would quantify the impact of a building on the park, and it could come to a form of a taxation for the building and for a new development. But it's not like that. So we're trying to be creative, but I feel uncomfortable myself, which we are talking for a long time. How much now? Personally, I don't know how to quantify that. I will have difficulty doing that with a client myself. I believe it's the rush and the fact we have to vote on that, but we're not giving time and focusing also on the rezoning and especially on the building. You know, we've been talking very vaguely about a lot of stuff. The only things that will remain there is this building, is this structure, which will have an impact in so many ways. You know, we're not talking about durability, which is a very important.
Okay, so do we want to leave? Let's get these conditions and then we can vote over it. We want to leave with a substantial long-term commitment to be negotiated with the Parks Department. And we can vote on it. So what's retail?
Somebody please mute themselves, please.
We wanted conditions that would require a diversity in the retail space. to be limited to.
Let somebody mute themselves.
Do
I
we
think
want
that's a
to-
good, I think that's a good idea, Del,
I do too.
about
I
the
think it's a great
diversity in
idea.
the retail space.
Yes. Not
And
to
I-
be limited to bars and bars and restaurants.
Yeah.
And that
And-
they would have to do outreach with the community to get feedback as to what the community would like to see.
So Dale, can we put specifically to talk with the coalition of the block association, which they are, just at the border of the historic district is the small fabric, and and we're very impacted. Whatever happened, we pay the consequences. If
Is
you
there a
live-
block association there?
many block association, and we are a coalition of block association.
Oh, coalition. Okay.
You can call it
put
the
that down.
Greenpoint Coalition, but there is a Noble Street, Oak Street, and Milton Street, Kent Street. I mean, so there is the immediate community, and then we can be in touch with other residents in the surrounding that may not be that formally organized.
Okay.
And but also they're important. Another thing is in language, talking about durability. And I said it's a very important concept in architecture. It's not how durable it is, but how durable is also design-wise to sustain time and the building to be lively and always contemporary. So it's a very important concept that is very forgotten about in New York City. And we can see the consequences on Williamsburg, on the waterfront, how building not only are material-wise not durable, but design-wise, that they never had expressed durability.
What about what conditions do we want for sustainability for the greening?
That they they heat and cool the building and power the building from a non-fossil fuel source.
Okay.
But also the incorporation of a green plant system within the building, not just a roof you put some grass, is kind of a past idea and very easy idea. And I mentioned before, I said, look at project in Milan, vertical forest, many of you may know, but it's very interesting. The building is recycled water, has plant, a balcony, especially they present this volume that were coming in and out, definitely make the building appear green. If you don't want to dedicate space, make the building appear green. If you don't want to.
So what is that called then? I know what you're talking about because I've seen it in Berlin. What is that called?
Sante, you're muted.
Oh.
Why don't we mention, as an example, it's called Vertical Forest in Milan. And at least we have that as a mention. I can send you more detail if you want, Dale. But it could be interesting. They literally collect water. The balcony plants. The building, it's a green system. I don't want to give them the burden of working in that extent, but it's been already done, could be easily incorporated, or at least in some portion of the building. Take water, they recycle their own water. So the whole concept of bioswale.
It's done in a number of places. All right, I'm going to make a motion that we approve with a very strong requirement that the following conditions are met to a substantial degree. So it would be the conditions would be that the building is more contextual with the current residential and industrial buildings, so that they, for instance, by using materials such as bricks that would not provide such a hotel-like horizontal, that would not provide such hotel-like horizontal lines. that there is a substantial long-term commitment to contribute to the maintenance of the park to be negotiated with the Parks Department, that there is a commitment to a diversity of retail space, that they would, in doing this, they would do outreach to the community coalition of block associations to have a better sense of what the community needs, what the community wants, that there is an incorporation of, that they fuel with non-fossil fuels, and that they explore the incorporation of concepts such as the vertical forest concept.
Vertical forest in Milan. Also, Dale, if I can say something else, contextual. The building with the brick, which I like, I wish it was there. We were integrated and add more, but it's not going to be there because it's going to be demolished entirely. We have a brick building, which is an historic building, but it's not a landmark building either. And you know that I've been always very conservative in the approach in regard to landmark because I didn't want us as a board member to adventure in subjective decision. But I have to say that, it doesn't mean that we have to use a brick. You can use a brick very badly. It's been used, over-abused very badly. Architecture is done of beautiful buildings that they exist very harmoniously, and they are made of material that may seem absurd to
What I
many.
said was, for example, possible use, I said, for example, use of brick.
Yeah, but it could be stainless steel, but be harmonious because the design, the concept itself is valuable, and that's what is about art. You can live in a Baroque building, an antique building, but you have beautiful modern piece of art inside, and they coexist properly. So it doesn't mean we need a good architectural project, a good concept that need to be properly evaluated and commented by the community.
Well,
I don't know what contextualism mean in the sense
I
around
understand, but we cannot just leave something open-ended because we have to give the borough president something concrete to work with.
So there's a request for rain gardens on the curb in the chat, which I think makes sense.
Rain gardens?
Yeah, on the curb.
That's a standard recommendation in every BP recommendation report.
Thank you, Richard. The motion, I've made the motion. Does anyone want to second it?
Wait, do you have the park contribution condition in there?
I have a substantial long-term commitment to contribute to the maintenance of the
Yeah, I can't hear you because who's 718, 8, whatever, you got it.
That I have that there would be a substantial long-term commitment to contribute to the maintenance of the park to be negotiated with the Parks Department.
Steve, you're muted.
Is that okay?
So does anyone want to second the motion?
Moishe and second the motion.
Okay. See, Trina seconded, I think.
Sure.
Or was it Rob?
David Niederman.
David Niederman, okay. Okay, roll call vote, Jerry, please.
Deltig,
Yes.
Maria Vieira, Maria Vieira,
Yes.
Trina McKeever,
Yes.
Stephen Chesler,
Yes.
Erin Drinkwater,
Yes.
Moishe Indig,
Yes.
Ozana Kaminsky,
Yes.
Abraham Leibovitz, Sante Michelli,
Yes.
Rabbi Niederman,
Yes.
Karen Nieves,
Yes.
Isaac Sofer, Robert Solano,
Yes.
William Vega,
Yes.
Stephen Weidberg, Simon Weiser, Michael Andrews,
Yes.
Keith Berger,
Yes.
Corey Canton,
Yes.
Michael Kowachka,
Yes.
Katie Naplatarski,
Yes.
Allison Stone.
Yes.
Thank you. 18 yes, 0 no, 0 abstention, motion carries. Thank you.
Del, I'd like to just make a point about the chat, that I think it's important that at in-person meetings, the public is able to give comments, I believe. And so I think it's really important that someone is keeping an eye on the chat, because there was another recommendation here about asking the board to include axing the not having the parking. So I think it's really important that we keep an eye on that since we are not in person.
I agree. Are you volunteering?
Del, as the I'll do it.
Who?
If
Who
you
is
don't
going to
mind.
do it? Maria?
Yes, this is Maria.
There you go.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next item, which is the open restaurant. Now, I don't know if anyone is here to present on that. We did have a presentation at the full board meeting.
Hello, this is Ben Huff from City Planning.
Oh, hi, Ben.
Here, representing the Open Restaurants Project, and I have Alexandra Patty Diaz with me as well.
Okay, great.
Hi, I'm here as well.
Okay, so I did communicate with Patty Diaz, and I said that I didn't think we expected you to do your whole presentation all over again. Certainly, if committee members need some or more or all of the presentation, we can do it. But you did present recently, and there were. I just wrote up some of the concerns that I recalled from the community board and from residents when you did your presentation. So let me just ask, are there any committee members who feel you need the whole presentation all over again? Okay, that sounds like a loud resounding no.
I've been watching the presentation 6 times already.
Okay, go.
Until last night.
So, if you bear with me, some of the things that I remember from public hearing, board members did agree that, or many board members, I'm not saying everyone, but many agreed that the restaurants had suffered through no fault of their own from the shutdown, and that they needed help in getting back on their feet. However, there was a considerable opposition to the application due to the lack of safety standards regarding the construction of the outdoor sheds, the increase in garbage and noise associated with the use of the sheds, reduction in parking spaces, size of the sidewalk space for the pedestrians, and the permanent nature of the amendment. I think many speakers felt it was premature to ask the board's approval of the text amendment until these concerns were addressed. Many people felt that it should be maybe on a temporary basis, maybe for another year, to possibly be extended. But some people felt that that COVID was being exploited in pushing this, and so that's what I wrote that down. That's what I remember from the comments that were made at the full board presentation. But that's just my take, and so I open it to the committee to disagree or add to, take away from, whatever I just presented. And then, of course, ask any questions that you want to ask of Ben and of Alexander.
Yeah, Del, this is Steve. Yeah, I still feel, I basically embrace all the sentiments of everything, of those comments that you just, you read to us. I think, one thing that stands out is the idea of permanence. I can understand for a little, for the near future to sustain, our restaurants, just to get out of this, this horror that is the pandemic. But, in reality, publicly owned space is being allocated to private businesses, and they're not, they're essentially getting it for free. And, for temporary sustainability, I support that, but on a permanent basis, I might take issue with that. And I feel like there has to be further planning on how we want to use our streets, along with open streets and everything else, especially in our neighborhood with these massive rezonings and the ones that already happened and an influx of people. But, and yeah, I think until upstream, a lot of these concerns are addressed, I just feel I have a hard time just kind of, approving, the zoning to allow this to happen and just kind of unleashing the hounds, so to speak. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Stevie. And that represents a lot of concerns that we've heard from a lot of the boards. I'd just like to sort of respond a bit that, what the zoning text amendment is doing is removing zoning as a requirement for a restaurant to apply for a sidewalk cafe. We are not attempting to make permanent sort of the emergency situation that has existed. What we found from COVID-19 is that there's many places where sidewalk cafes could work that were previously not allowed because of zoning. And so this is strictly just for sidewalk cafes. And just to comment on the free use of public space, we don't expect in the future program at all that the program will be free. There will be fees for restaurants as part of the revocable consent to have a sidewalk cafe or a roadway cafe. Sidewalk cafes will go back to coming before the board. So the community board will be able to comment and on sidewalk cafe applications. So we do hope the permanent program will have a lot of structure that the community board can feel comfortable with.
I have a question. When you say this is only for sidewalk cafes, are you saying this does not include those sheds that are being built out in the street and on the sidewalk?
So zoning does not go into the roadway. Sidewalk cafes exist in zoning, have for 50 years, and they were very limited on where sidewalk cafes could occur. And in addition, they had siting criteria rules that they had to follow. We're focusing on strengthening those siting criteria rules and clear path requirements that are required of cafes. We'd like to sort of ramp up inspections of that and move that program from the Department of Consumer Workforce Protection, which is a licensing agency, to the Department of Transportation, who could have a more holistic view of the curb and be aware of the other competing uses and initiatives on the curb. And so, yeah, this text amendment only extends to sidewalk cafes and is removing sidewalk cafe regulations from zoning. They'll still have setting criteria, clear path rules they'll have to follow. Those existed in a combination of zoning and at DCWP. That will be moved to the Department of Transportation. There will be more to come through CAPA and the rulemaking process for the creation of the roadway program and that authority. So this vote is not on the permanent open restaurant program per se. It's on a very particular piece of it, which is removing zoning as a requirement for having a sidewalk cafe. The city will be coming. Yep.
This will not affect yay or nay on these sheds that are being constructed at the curb or even into the street.
No, again, zoning does not go out into the roadway. The roadway program was created sort of through emergency order, and the council voted on a bill that legalized it. We are developing a permanent program that will have to go through the CAPA rulemaking process, which community boards will, the community will have the ability to sort of weigh in and get a better understanding of the rollout of those operations, as well as design guidelines for those. And we expect it to be different than what the emergency program has created. That was very reactionary. a response to a ban on indoor dining and trying to give hope to restaurants, and also worry, we were very worried about the supply chain at that time. But now, we've learned a lot from this emergency program, which has lasted a lot longer than many of us expected, and there's still a lot of work to go on that. What's before the board? We wanted to preview kind of everything the city is working on, and ways that we're thinking. And basically, the zoning text amendment is sort of initial piece on how to have a better improved sidewalk and roadway program in the future. But it only affects sidewalk cafes and how restaurants would apply. Previously, an application was sent in to the Department of Consumer Workforce Protection, and they had to check to see if it had the appropriate zoning before they would accept the application. That would just remove that step of the process. They would still have to apply, make sure their application is complete. That application is charter mandated to then come before the community board, where they are allowed to weigh in and review that application. And we, as an agency, got many requests for commercial overlays to legalize sidewalk cafes for buildings that were built. So this is sort of a way to streamline the sidewalk cafe program. I think that's a lot. I'll stop now if people have more questions.
Can I weigh in, Del?
Yes.
I think this is a good idea. I think it removes, from what I can see, bureaucracy. I think that the changes in COVID on the sidewalk has brought more vitality. It's not the sheds we're talking about. And I'd also like to point out that those restaurants do pay taxes, so that is a form of payment. Just a little point out on that. But I think that this is a good thing.
If helpful, I can share the map that shows the current zoning regulations, and I could maybe talk a bit about how that will change, but it will show sidewalk cafes currently are legal in a lot of Community Board 1.
I think that it was not clear at the full board. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe many of us, myself included, thought that this was also going to affect the sheds that many people have had some issues with.
Yeah, I think, as we are going to the public, explaining changes that we are making to zoning, as well as there was an announcement of a permanent open restaurants program. We are sort of explaining that to the public, or, taking the opportunity, as this is our first wave of public meetings where we can sort of showcase that. So there's 3 different pieces of creating a permanent open restaurant program that would allow restaurants to use the sidewalk as well as the roadway. The first of which is removing sidewalk cafe regulations from zoning. So can everyone see my screen now?
No.
Oh, you can't?
No.
While you're waiting, if you recall, several years ago, the board had a weigh in on Teddy's when it tried to do the commercial overlay to allow itself to do the sidewalk cafe that it had previously. So
Yes.
based on that, you would not need to, if you're an existing restaurant and you are not in a commercial district, the whole initiative would not require you to do a rezoning, a very expensive rezoning, to be able to do outdoor cafe.
Right.
And we're happy to share this presentation with the board. Again, I think we might have when we met previously. Can everyone see my screen now?
Yes.
So this map shows the current zoning regulations. What you see in green allows for all types of cafes to apply and for people to get a sidewalk cafe. Blue are residential areas. This zoning text amendment won't allow restaurants as of right in these residential areas. But there are restaurants that predate this zoning and may exist in those areas, and those might be the people that request commercial overlays. In red are areas that specifically prohibit sidewalk cafes from occurring, so that you can see along Broadway. That's because it's a street that has an elevated rail line. And so we're not really sure why zoning, whether it was a health reason or something else, banned sidewalk cafes, but there have been sidewalk cafes occurring during the emergency program on the street, and they've managed to, maintain nice cafes. They'll still have to meet clear path requirements. Most of the city will require an 8-foot clear path, as was before. I know that many restaurants may not be meeting that right now. That's something that the city is trying to catch up and do a better job of enforcing, but we expect in the permanent program that they will have to show a plan when they apply before they get a license for a sidewalk cafe, rather than the self-certified program that's happened. Anyway, so that's the current zoning of Williamsburg. So this would allow restaurants in the blue and red areas to apply for a sidewalk cafe, though they'd still have to meet that siting criteria and clear path requirements. So before COVID, in March 2020, there were 85 sidewalk cafes that were licensed by the city. So you can see where those cafes existed. And there's a lot more that exist under the emergency program. It has been free. It has been a self-certified program. So we definitely see this as sort of the high watermark of the amount of sidewalk cafes that would participate. But what this zoning would do is that for these small number of restaurants, there's actually only 3 on Broadway that are red, and the blue restaurants sort of scattered throughout the district, that they would be able to apply in a non-emergency setting in the permanent program, as long as they meet the appropriate clear path requirements and siting criteria.
So thank you. Are we ready to vote on this? Or
I just want to understand the
Can I
mechanics.
say something there?
wait. First, I think Trina, are you?
Yeah, I have a quick question. I just want to understand the mechanics of what we're doing tonight.
Okay.
Tonight, we're just voting to do away with all the regulations, the prohibitions on where a sidewalk cafe can be, so that city planning and DOT can then bring back to the board at a future date the regulations and the breakup of who's responsible for what in a more organized fashion. But tonight we're voting to just do away with the rules that exist.
Trina, I think it's just a matter of the rules. I think the rules will still be there, but what will happen is the more restaurants will be allowed to apply. In other words, you won't have
In the red zone and the blue zone.
away with the zoning, so that the restaurant will be able to, if there is a restaurant legally there, the restaurant will be able to apply, but will still have to go meet the criteria and the clear path requirements, and will still come to the community board. Is that right? Ben?
Dale, can I say something, please?
Wait, let me ask Ben if that's correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
Sidewalk.
Sante?
Yeah.
Also, I've
One
had my
mod.
hand up.
Wait, Sante has something he wants to say.
I put a question in the chat. I've had my hand up, but go ahead, Sante.
First, Dale,
Karen, sorry.
Dale, I want to tell you, as you know, that yesterday there was this same presentation was done at the Borough President office. So I attended. Actually, I ended up speaking as a chair of the outreach committee, from Community Board 1. Our chair Fuller was there too, and all the community board were there, and I want to tell you that the majority of the chair from all the community board were outraged, and Richard Barak was there. He can testify that were outraged, and there were a lot of adverse sentiment. And what I had mentioned before, that this is definitely predatory. And of course, we need to understand better. This is very complex because overlap a series of components which they don't belong necessarily to city planning, and the street, the roadside occupation is from DOT. But I want you to be aware that by allowing this change of zoning regulation, and this is going to create the condition first to lose diversity, retail diversity. This has already happened here in our block. Robert Solano has been with me until midnight in many meetings exactly for this reason. So the sidewalk, it was well regulated. The sidewalk program, where zoning wise, was the result of decades of work for community. It is unacceptable because the moment people come out, you cannot control sound, noise, quality of life. We're not talking about community. They have commercial overlay. What that means, if you're not really, we are on a land use committee, it means that the predominant zoning is residential. It means that 99% of the people, like, you know, in Greenpoint by the historic district, 3-story and 4-story building, literally they reside there. They get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. All of a sudden, or there is a roadside structure, or that there is a sidewalk, which it couldn't exist in certain places before. Now you have like 50 people standing outside your window.
Excuse me, the regulations aren't changing though. He already said that those regulations are not going to be changing and that there's still going to be a moratorium.
Can I speak, Katie? Can I speak, Katie? Because this is a, let me speak.
Okay.
You're rushing to say we vote when I just said the entire community boards from Brooklyn, they were outraged with this. And we should vote no. We vote for a text amendment without knowing what we're voting for. Literally, we are creating the condition to extend the program in place where maybe it's not supposed to be there.
Was this at the borough president's office? Was this a presentation before the borough president?
I defer to Richard if members of his staff were there, but I don't believe Eric Adams was there, the borough president.
I mean the borough president's office. Was this a hearing before the borough president?
Dell, this was the borough board meeting for all the community boards. The presentation was given to the borough board. Now it's going around to community boards, which we already had.
So was the opposition to just opening up the applications for sidewalk cafes, or was the opposition including those sheds that they've been putting up?
So
all the
that
above,
really was
all the
kind of
above,
thought-
all the above, parking, can't walk, wheelchairs not accessible, taking up the whole street, all the above. It's gonna be a real hassle. So the community boards, a lot of them was very much against the way this is set up now, and with the oversight and the enforcement.
But Dallas, were the objections? Were the objections to the sheds that they've been putting up, or was it, or were they also objecting to just the regular old-fashioned sidewalk cafes?
Well, it was the plan that was given last night, and they just don't see how it's going to work effectively. The way they're building the sheds, the extent they go into the street, and the extent they go out, in front of the buildings. So the board, we didn't vote on it. We saw the presentation. So it has to go to community boards. It has to, like we're having our meeting now, and then the committee sent a recommendation. Like you vote on it, you give a recommendation. But we heard the plan. And like they said, a lot of the chairpersons are opposed to this. They want to vote it out. They want taken and just voted out flat out last night and not even entertain it.
But
so the borough board is going to actually get this in October. October 5th will be the borough board hearing and potential vote. It was simply a presentation last night, and certainly there were some concerns that were there. A lot of it has to do with their theoretical rules, right? We don't know what the rules were going to be. Some people are like, don't get rid of your zoning until you have new rules, although in reality, you have the emergency conditions happening regardless of the zoning for the next, say, year and a half or so. And in theory, the rules should be ready in time so that they replace the emergency zoning. And the question will be, CAPA requires public input. It's not the same input as ULURP. How will the public, how will the community board play a role with the rules? Will you see a draft? Will you be part of developing the rules? How will you insert yourself to the process? We noticed from last night, DOT has a link, info at DOT, I forget the exact acronym, but you could start submitting, you see the outdoor dining now, you see the way restaurants have gone beyond standard sidewalk cafes during the emergency. This is an opportunity to share what you like and you don't like, to try to shape rules that might make sense.
Richards is absolutely right. It was just a very contentious meeting.
Wait,
Well,
let's
has been
let
waiting to speak
Cialis
for a
speak,
while.
please. Let Cialis, our chair, speak.
I'm saying Richard is right. Right now it's going through the process, but last night it was a very contentious meeting, and Richard is absolutely right. It has to go through the process. We have to look at this very carefully and determine what we want to see, what kind of oversight with the regulations and everything. So we have to look at this very closely and decide how we want to, present this back, because it still has to go through the full process.
So let me ask Cialis, are you saying that even though what's before us right now seems to be just a small part of it, that the various community boards felt that we shouldn't even vote in favor of this until we have a better sense of the overall plan?
Yes, and better regulations. I didn't see the whole presentation because last night, I think maybe he just did the one that pertains to this district. And I don't know if you're going to do the same you're going to do a presentation that's going to be relative to other districts, other community boards. I don't know if are you showing the same presentation that you showed last night to all the community boards, or is it going to be relevant to their district?
We show one specific for each community board.
Yeah, see, that's the difference.
Most of the presentation is the same, and then we show those maps that I just showed the community board of how zoning works right now, and how many how many cafes existed pre-COVID, how many exist now. But for the most part, the presentation is the same. We also present with DOT's presentation is sort of their goals and visions of the permanent open restaurant program, and then it comes in and we explain the text amendment specifically.
Okay, so what we have to look at is the presentation that you showed us pertaining to our district, and we have to look at this presentation very closely to see with the new regulations and oversight if it's going to be a good fit for our district.
Del, can I jump in? Because my cell phone's about to die on me.
Yeah.
Okay, what I want to say is Sidewalk Cafes was always a major revenue maker for the city. So we have to be very thoughtful, because the city is hurting for money. And I don't know if this is driven to create revenue, or is it driven to provide our communities, our streets, a better standard of living with these services. So that's my main concern, because it was always Sidewalk Cafes was always a big moneymaker for the city. I'm going to be offline for a little bit to charge my phone. Unfortunately, Marisa is not working where I live, so I have to be walking the streets to participate. I hope to be back soon. Thank you for letting me speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Did Karen Nieves have something she wanted to say?
Yeah, an hour ago.
Sorry.
First and foremost, it is crucial that our SLA Public Safety Committee weighs in on this. I understand that this is a zoning issue. It needs to go through the Land Use Committee, but they work day in and day and night on these cafe licenses and approving them. I think we need to have a written statement from that committee. I'm not sure if we're supposed to vote on this right now.
Yes,
Is
we
there-
are. Yes, we are. We will
We
vote
are.
on it tonight. Yes.
Okay, so we're voting on something that we did not get the committee, the SLA and land use committee's recommendations or concerns or position. I think is not a good idea, number one.
Can
Number
I
two,
just say something, Karen?
yes.
I think Karen has a very good point. This is a very contentious zoning for the whole borough. And I think that this committee should probably meet with SLA and the presenters. And I think you need to meet together and hash out all this together because it's going to be liquor license involved and everything. So I think you both committees should meet on this and come to an agreement.
Absolutely, because what Sante is saying is absolutely correct. If we take away this regulation, okay, right now, believe me, I want to support businesses wholeheartedly. I think with COVID, what happened was, unfortunate, but at the same time, if we remove this without enforcement and without the guarantee for enforcement, we get 311 calls. How many times for outside cafes for abuse of some of the bars and restaurants? Now we get flooded with complaints. So now we're going to be overburdened in some of these other areas. I think it needs to be case by case, and block by block, not just an overall remove this regulation and we're going to get flooded without like actually the chair just said. We don't know. We don't know what the rules are. Are they going to be changing? Are they going to be more stricter? So until then, and until we get the recommendation from our committee, from our SLA committee, we should not be voting on this. That's my 2 cents.
So just to make it clear, we're going to know by the calendar for September 20th of the City Planning Commission, which is going to go out next week, whether this is going to be heard on October 5th at the commission. I'm sorry, October 6th at the commission. So, the process is going to move on whether you weigh in or not. If it's not the 6th, you could expect it to be the 20th. So if you don't weigh in for the commission, the council is going to be soon after. So you don't have a lot of time to catch up. If you choose to miss the commission, that's fine. But if it goes on to the council, if you don't have a recommendation at some point in November, you might not be heard as a community board as part of the zoning part of this. I emailed Dell the chat from last night. You're going to see a lot of comments from your neighborhood, actually. A lot of Berry Street Association folks were weighing in with comments. So you'll learn some of the direct problems they've been noticing on mostly open streets, I believe more so than the open sidewalks, but still, I think there were issues about the observation of the width along the streets. So you could certainly share that document, Dell, among the committee, the full board, the full neighborhood. That might help you learn, but I think an important task is going to be helping establish rules. Should there be any rules for the sidewalks or no sidewalks? Should there be any rules for the street or nothing happening in the streets? So that's going to be an important thing regardless. The one thing with the zoning, besides being taken out of the resolution, there will be a modest zoning text that is going to allow restaurants to have, in essence, the equivalent of a fast food window, like for food to come in and out per se, to facilitate outdoor servicing, whether it's takeout, whether it's outdoor customers. So that's the only part of a zoning proposal other than removing city planning's role in sidewalk cafes in terms of governing what streets.
Well, we can vote to deny the application as premature.
Correct.
Hey, Madam Chair, this is
Del,
Steve Wygoda.
do I have a
Can I
chance
get,
to read
can
some of
I
the
get,
messages in the
excuse
chat
me,
because they're becoming a little bit backed up and no good deed goes unpunished when I volunteer to do this, but
excuse me,
here
this
it
is
is.
Steve Wygoda. Do you allow
So, can you hear
public
me?
person, do you allow a public person to speak in this time?
Yes, we can allow someone, but it has to be very quick because we have
Yeah,
to
it's
move
quick.
on.
It's quick. So I'm an architect. I was the architect of 79 Quay, but I'm also the architect of about 1,500 sidewalk cafes in New York for the last 40 years. And the issue that you're discussing now, I've lived most of my career, aside from the buildings that I designed, with sidewalk cafes. I worked with Gretchen Dykstra, with commissioners, with DOT, with fire department, etc. This is a very complex issue. Quality of life issues, liquor licenses, sound, times of operation. We have tweaked the sidewalk cafe regulations for the last 40 years. I was the author of what's called the small sidewalk cafes. Commissioner Amanda Burden was ready to do some of these in Queens and give some of those small restaurants and Brooklyn a chance to have some outdoor seating, limited hours. But you're opening up a huge situation, and I will personally say I resent city planning interfering with this. I resent city planning taking consumer affairs out of the program. And 15 years ago, we removed DOT from the program and DEP. So, but I don't really want to spend my time with this program and weighing in on this, but please, what I'm hearing from your board members is very true. It's very complex. We talked about sustainability for the building. I appreciate, the concepts. This is sustainability of neighborhoods between people going to sleep and people waking up and so on. Allow yourself the time to make the right decisions. It's not an easy decision. That's what I have to say.
Do I have a motion?
Del, do I have the ability to read the comments from the public?
Yes.
I mean,
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So, of course, it's not about sheds, but Janice, I'm sorry, I don't want to butcher your name, Janice Malecki.
But please, some of it's about the sheds. So let's, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't read it, but just let's.
So do you want me to
make sure we're clear as to what we're talking about.
So you want me to skip certain messages? Okay.
Well, I mean, not necessarily. You can decide. You're the one who's reading.
So, from Scott to everyone, thank you, Sante. Noise is such a major quality of life issue these days. And Joe Birdie, we should not rush this recommendation. Too many questions, and we have time to vote. Someone, Tammy Stronach, I personally like the outdoor dining, especially since COVID is not over. I don't want to dine inside yet till kids get vaccinated. She's got another point, but it's not relevant to this issue. There is no clarity on jurisdiction for any of this. And as a result, there is zero inspection nor enforcement. It is a free-for-all with no enforcement. Allison Stone, I don't speak for the sake of moving this meeting forward, but would like to share my input. I've been a fan of Sidewalk Cafe expansion, but the lack of sanitation in the neighborhood has been next level terrible. I'm sure others agree. Decaying rats, trash piles in North Brooklyn are a big issue. I like the accessibility of it dining outside during a pandemic, but we also need to see a major effort to improve trash control and see cleaner streets with all of these changes. Is there a deadline, Steve? This is being pushed through without proper scrutiny. It's clear what is trying to be done here, and there should be no vote at this time. Going to only the messages in regards to this. Please do not let the city push this through. We need regulations for sidewalk cafes. It seems like writing a blank check with our public space. We need much more specific information on the new rules and time for community and other input. And Joe Iberti says, in that case, this requires a no vote to the zoning change. Vote no. And thank you, Shlomo, from Joe Iberti.
Okay, thank you. And let me just say, to what Richard was saying, we want to weigh in on this, because otherwise our voice is lost. So we vote yes or we vote no. And we can vote no as that it is premature, that it's being pushed through when we don't, it doesn't need to be pushed this quickly until we have more clarity on what inspections and what enforcement will be done for sanitation and noise, and they still have the emergency allowances. So we can vote no, we can vote yes. Do I have a motion?
We make a motion to postpone the vote?
No. We can never do that. If we do that, we will not have a voice. Let's vote.
Okay.
We cannot do that. We can't postpone River Rent either. We can't postpone. These things are here because we have to vote on them. We have to present it to the full board, and the full board will vote, or the full board won't vote. But if we want a say, then we have to vote tonight.
And if
All
you
right,
want,
I make a motion to deny the application based on the fact that what I just said, that it is premature, that they don't need to have this change yet. They have time to come back to the community with a more specific plan, overall plan for what they're doing with our sidewalks, and for what enforcement and inspections will be done on the sidewalks on the bigger. So that's
I second the motion to vote no and to deny this text amendment.
Okay, so Sante seconds it. Roll call vote, Jerry.
Chair Teague,
Yes, yes to deny.
okay, so just a reminder to the members that a yes is to adopt the committee's recommendation to deny. Maria Vieira,
Yes.
Trina McKeever,
Yes.
Stephen Chesler,
Yes.
Erin Drinkwater,
Yes.
Moisha Indig,
Yes.
Ozena Kaminsky,
Yes.
Abraham Leibovitz, Sante Maselli.
I second the motion, so I say yes.
You have to vote whether you second the motion or you made the motion. You still have to vote.
Believe it or
Yes.
not, Sante, I've seen people second the motion and then vote against it, so.
Rabbi Neiman,
Yes.
Karen Nieves,
Yes.
Isaac Sofer, Robert Solano, Rob Solano,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
William Vega. William, you back on? Stephen Weidberg, Simon Weiser,
Yes.
Michael Andrews,
Yes.
Keith Berger,
yes.
Corey Canton,
Yes.
Michael Kowachka,
Yes.
Katie Neplatarski,
Yes.
Allison Stone,
Yes.
You hear me, Simon?
I hear
You hear me?
Simon. Yes.
I voted yes.
Jerry, did you hear me? This is Rob. I voted yes.
Yes, Rob. 18 yes, 0 no, 0 abstention. Motion to deny carries. Thank you.
Okay. And now for the coup d'etat, the River Ring application, which we had the public hearing on. How would you all like to proceed on this? I think you've all received suggested, I believe these conditions were meant to be attached to a no vote with conditions. At least that's what Steve Chesler told me earlier. I don't know if that's the case, but I think that Steve and Katie prepared some suggested conditions, and they sent it to everybody, all the committee members. My understanding was that these conditions were to be attached to a no vote, but I'll let Steve and Katie clarify.
Well, I guess what it came from is like what I wrote, my note to the, is just, taking in, there's been just, incredible stream of input from, via, from email, online meetings, in-person meetings, and then, the hearing, and the, petitions, et cetera, that, just taking in many, just many factors, but my feeling is, as the project is presented, I feel like is a huge problem. And so, just summarizing is just in terms of, there's a trust issue just in terms of it came out, it was both sent to us in writing and was in a testimony at the hearing, is the abuse of tenants at 125 Court Street and the lawsuit, and then the affordable units at 1 South First, that they have not been rented till this day. And in my mind, in a sense, those are almost disqualifying things. But at the same time, there's some very powerful voices in the neighborhood. The coalition letter from St. Nick's, El Puente, and Los Sudes, they are just deeply embracing the opportunity for affordable housing. And I think one of the most powerful things in that letter was having the South Side having access to the waterfront, to a soft water's edge. El Puente and the South Side fought, shoulder to shoulder with the North Side and Greenpoint to secure all Bushwick Park. So I feel in a way that, we need to join forces again and help them get that. But the other side of it is just the enormity of this project, just looking at the parts of the EIS, on the stress on transit, on the subway transit. It's right now, MTA is, looks at the Bedford L station as basically at capacity, and analyzes, the Riverine project bring another 500 trips and during rush hour, at morning, night, and on the weekends. And then I went back and looked at the Domino EIS, the update, and that will bring in double that. So it translating into almost like 10 people per car, per train in the morning and in the evening and on the weekends. So just bring all those factors in, and Katie, work with me on this, echoing everything. So I'm suggesting just, as a strong condition, is to reduce the size of the project, the number of people in the neighborhood that would come in through this project, by suggesting it be reduced a third. We still would have almost 180 affordable units. And then another condition would be that the units at 1 South First have to be rented. And then just in terms of I realize with MIH, there's a requirement that there's there's certain allocation of large rooms, of 2 bedrooms and bigger, be included. So so that doesn't need to be there, but maybe it needs to be in there just to ensure that happens. And I think that's, those are the core. Just
well, you mentioned here in the conditions, let me be clear that the total affordable units would be 50% of the units once the number of units was reduced by 33%, that the building would have to be smaller and more contextual.
Yeah.
I don't know if
regarding the 50%, I think, you know, the coalition acknowledged that Two Trees had, you know, adjusted their AMI numbers down, but they requested that they go further in terms of the number of units. So I
Right.
think, and just looking at the other side, look at the 2005 rezoning and how it fell so short in the commitment of the number of affordable units. It's supposed to be, you know, around 30%. And city planning a couple of years ago in their update said it's around 15. So I feel like even though this property is outside the rezoning, it's right nearby. And so we almost need like a correction in a way through this large scale project. So, yeah, and I took out the wastewater, processing wastewater on site because they're doing that. So.
I would.
Can I-
Oh, go
Can I
ahead.
just jump in real quick, Del? Just to say to your question, and as Steve said too, the idea is no with conditions rather than yes with conditions, because of the feeling that that some of the conditions are so weighty and that they need to be taken so seriously that it's not maybe these conditions or maybe no, not, but definitely these conditions, and that if these conditions are not met, then it is a no. So in answer to your question, no with conditions.
I'd like to make a motion that we say yes with conditions, because then we have more leverage over Two Trees. We can put the condition that yes, with the condition that CB1 is part of the advisory committee. If you want more leverage and a seat at the table and you want to be taken seriously, I would approve with conditions so that you have a carrot off of them rather than if you.
I disagree. I think that I think it's much more weighty if we vote no with the condition. I think if we vote yes with the conditions,
Once you vote,
we are giving the administration a much more, making it much easier for the administration to approve, and they'll say, well, no, we approve it, and we've taken at least some of the conditions that the community board said. We've looked at them. I believe, in my experience and having been on this board for since I think the beginning of time, I think no is the stronger vote.
I feel, David Needham, I agree with you, Del, that yes, with condition, we should have a say. If not, we have no say.
I'm not sure, Rabbi, I don't know if you're agreeing with me. I think no with conditions means that we have more say, that it's very strong, that we know unless they were to actually meet all of these conditions.
Oh.
I agree with Michael, and I agree with Rabbi Niederman. I don't understand the concept of no with a condition, because if it's no, it's a no. But I much prefer, and it's less confusing when you say yes, but here are the conditions.
Well, we can vote on it. I think that no with conditions means we are essentially against it, and that these conditions are so important that unless these conditions are met, the vote is no.
I agree, Del.
I view that no, essentially, the conditions are really to explain why the project isn't adequate in its current form. And I just want to bring this conversation back for a second in a way in which we looked at 79 Quay, because I think it's important to quantify what the ask is. So the developers are looking for 4 times the current density and more or less 8 times the height of what we currently have. So I think it's really an enormous ask. And so in the last discussion, we were talking about the value of 2 floors. In this instance, we're talking about, you know, the second largest tower in Brooklyn. So I think that it's fair to look at it and say the developers have really put an enormous ask on our community from a density perspective with not enough affordable housing or outdoor space to make it worth it. So I say no, and the conditions are to explain why.
Del, could we ask Senator
I'm
Kavanaugh?
actually seconding, I am seconding Michael's motion to yes with conditions.
Wait, I didn't hear a motion.
I think we're still in discussion. It was not a motion.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Are we
It's a
talking
motion, yes,
about?
with conditions.
Well,
That-
in discussion.
Del, could we take advantage of the fact that Senator Kavanaugh is in the room and ask
Yeah.
him to explain to us what the situation is at 1 South First, the Two Trees property that where the affordable housing hasn't been built?
Sure, sure. Senator?
Hi, folks. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here and to listen to a very lively discussion about a few big issues. I would also note that I sponsored the bill that created the exceptions to the open meetings law that permits in-person, not remote meetings like this for basically any entity in the state except the New York State Senate and the New York State Assembly. We did that last week. So here we are. Yeah, I was asked to come and just talk a little bit about this. I think there has been some confusion, and I know, Two Trees folks were here as well. But there's been a perception that somehow a change in the law in Albany has prevented the tenanting of those units. And from my perspective, that's simply not the case. There were basically three laws that are relevant here. The what's sometimes called the old 421. 421A is a tax exemption program that basically exempts new residential construction from most of New York City's real property tax if they meet requirements of affordability. And the programs are complicated, but basically there was an old program, or sometimes called the old 421A, which applies to buildings commenced prior to December 31st, 2015. And that basically required that 20% of the units be affordable, and the affordability is defined as 40% or below of the area median income. And then the remaining units, the affordable units would be affordable for about 35 years. The remaining units are subject to rent regulation, even though they are starting out at market rates for the duration of the tax break, which is typically shorter than 35 years. The new 421A program was a very different, made a whole range of changes. But for this purpose, the relevant issue is that given where those particular 421A, those particular Two Trees developments are situated, they would be eligible under the new program for the tax breaks, provided they provided 30% of the units affordable. But the affordability in that program is defined much more unaffordably, if you will, at up to 130% of the area median income. And that, again, that was passed in 2017. I was actually still in the assembly then and opposed to the changes because I thought, it made the whole program too generous relative to a very modest amount of affordability. Incidentally, I also think the prior program was also too generous in that it doesn't provide enough affordability relative to the very generous tax break. But the other big piece of this is the Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act. This is the bill that we passed in 2019 that transformed basically every aspect of the rent stabilization laws and much of landlord-tenant law throughout the state. I led the negotiations for the Senate on that. And it's no exaggeration that it's the strongest piece of tenant protection legislation in the last half century. It eliminated most of the loopholes in the rent regulation system. It also created all kinds of rights for people who are not subject to rent regulation, including residents of manufactured and mobile home parks and people facing eviction. So it's a very wide-ranging statute. Many people have approached us after that to get exemptions on the notion that there were unintended consequences of HSTPA. And basically, we have taken all of those seriously. We fielded them individually. We began having a conversation in the late fall of 2019 about whether there was a change necessary. And just as a more general matter, to the extent the city had affordability deals, we told them if there was something about HSTPA that upended your efforts to create affordability, you, the city of New York, should come to us and tell us there's a change in the law that's necessary for you to achieve the intent of your deals that you're making with developers to provide affordability. The upshot of this, and I'm sorry, it's a bit of a long-winded story, but it's complicated. But the upshot of this is that the city of New York has maintained now for a year and a half that there is no change in the law that is justified, that the request of Two Trees that have to have us pass a law that provides for an exemption from the rent stabilization provisions as they would apply under the old 421A program. It's basically as they would apply to the market rate units, is not necessary for the city and Two Trees to achieve the affordability goals that were agreed upon. And there was a proposal that Governor Cuomo would kind of champion in this and try to do it through the budget process in 2 consecutive budgets. That didn't come about. And basically, again, HSTPA changed a lot of things. It dramatically improved rights of tenants and protected lots of people from eviction. And we're generally we're not inclined to change it a la carte for particular developers to be exempted from generally applicable restrictions that are the restrictions they need to comply with to maintain, to gain very generous tax breaks. I think I will stop there. I realize that was a lot, but.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Kavanaugh, aren't there 3 options to 421A? There's a deeper affordability option, so option A, where you could do 40 and 60 and 130.
There are a number of this. 420 is very technical, and I want to be a little careful here because the certain developers can qualify for a range of different options. My understanding is that because of where this project is situated in the new 421A program, they can qualify for the 30% of the units being affordable, but not, for example, the 25% unit provision that is being considered for River Ring, if I understand correctly. But the key thing is that the affordability limits are maximum. So the units have to be affordable for people who make no more than 130% of AMI, which is, a generous figure. There is nothing in the law that says you can't gain the benefit of the tax break by making the units more affordable than the requirements of the law. So, Two Trees has options here. And again, I know they're here and I feel awkward speaking, in the third person about them. But, just from my perspective, this is not something that we're inclined to change. And we believe that, Two Trees could live up to its promises for affordability there if they chose to. And just speaking personally, I think it's really a tragedy that those units remain unoccupied for years now. And I think, that's not ideal.
I have a question, Del, if I could ask it. As I understand, those affordable units are very low AMI, and that other developers on the waterfront that are with the new regulations have a much higher AMI. And so, I mean, in a sense, is them having to go with the new regulations with no carve out kind of, I mean, of course they could still go with the low AMI, but it wouldn't be, it would certainly be more difficult for them to do that.
They could, as I understand it, and again,
I mean, I'm just saying that's part of the equation. Sorry for interrupting.
Just as I understand it, the issue, they could go with the old, they could go with so-called old 421A, but old 421A has become somewhat less desirable because the HSTPA strengthened the protections for units under rent regulation. So there have been a number of proposals that they call fixing this. I don't believe it is fixing it. I believe it I see it as passing a standalone statute to increase the profitability of a single development.
Senator,
yeah,
just a quick, so the old 421A would allow them to do it at 60% AMI. The express frustration is they don't want to strengthen the law for the market rate side.
They
will
don't.
give them.
They don't want to comply with rent regulation. The rent regulation program amended rent regulation for anybody to subject to rent regulation. It did not change what is subject to rent regulation in old 421A. But rent regulation is now a more protective thing. So as I understand it, again, from a number of conversations with them and with their representatives, and from some bill text they proposed to us to try to get enacted, they would like to do old 421A, but exempt the units that would 80% of the units would otherwise be subject to rent regulation. They want us to pass a law that says they're not subject to rent regulation. And
I understand that, but I just want to put forth that having units at 60% AMI is really valuable to our community. And so I don't know the answer to this, but if that damages that possibility, then I don't know. I just don't see this as so clear.
Just to be clear, I don't think it damages that possibility. I think it is up to True Trees whether they want to live up to that obligation. And I think this project would be profitable living up to that obligation. I think it would be more profitable if both houses of the legislature and the governor and the city of New York were to decide to sweeten the deal by exempting them from rent regulation. But frankly, every developer in the city would like an a la carte exemption from portions of the rent regulation laws. So, but again, whether that's a reasonable position for them to take is a subject of, subject to for discussion with the developer. I'm also not taking a position today on Rivering. I think it's important that community boards consider those and approve it. And there are many interesting and valuable things about that proposal and about the prior desirability to do deep affordability in the prior project.
Can I ask a question? I know that the 421A plan as it exists right now, and I guess that's the lens through which Two Trees is applying, is going to sunset next June. How are we to look at if something is approved, is it grandfathered, or how does a change in 421A affect what we're looking at right now?
Yeah, the sunset, it is true that 421 expires next June and needs to be renewed or not, and there's been talk about whether to renew it, but generally speaking, it has not retroactively changed the tax breaks that developers got, provided that, they're in the program. So it typically goes to the question of whether a project prospectively will get the tax breaks.
Yeah, can I interject something there? Yeah, so number one, I just feel like, it's something we can't resolve here in this committee, that we should keep that condition in that basically Two Trees rent those units and let them figure it out with our various levels of government and our representatives. But also, I just want to point out a point of order about Michael's motion. Michael, I believe you have a conflict of interest because you're on the board of the local YMCA.
I've been cleared by the conflicts attorney with New York City, Chad Kalizida, and I was probably one of the few people to be vetted by him. I've been cleared. I have that in writing.
If he has a problem, I will make that motion.
Okay. Well, first off, I'd like to see that because we have an email saying he is conflicted. So I would. And that's the only person specifically noted by Chad to be conflicted in that email exchange.
All right, I'm happy to forward it. It was EK01, so the email chain does have it. I will forward it again.
So before I think that before we go anywhere on this, before we have a motion, I actually didn't understand that Michael made a motion. I think that only fair for you, Michael, to disclose what your relationship is with the Y.
I'm on the board of the Greenpoint YMCA. Two Trees has an agreement with the YMCA of Greater New York. I have nothing to do with that corporation. It's a separate company. It's a separate entity. And if there is a YMCA in the River Ring, it might even be a separate board. I don't know. So I might not be on that board. I am in no way affiliated with River Ring or the YMCA of Greater New York. I sit on the board of the Greenpoint YMCA. I'm an unpaid volunteer.
Okay, so I would like to mention that from the, I did read all of the testimony that came to us, and of course I was at the public hearing. And questions were asked of the representatives from the General YMCA and the Greenpoint Y with respect to information or commitments regarding the details of the aquatic facility that might be established at this site, and whether services would still be offered to the Greenpoint area, and they were not able to give us any specifics or any commitments. I would also like to just point out a few other things that struck me. Several people who spoke in favor of this development acknowledged that they understood we have development fatigue, but they testified they thought that Williamsburg might as well take on the additional market rate development, and somebody said to trap the rich people in the two towers so that it would save surrounding areas from suffering the same fate that they would let us suffer. The other thing I want to mention is the testimony of Susan Albrecht. I don't know how many people heard her, but in my mind, she's a person to be respected. She's someone who has, I don't know, is she working with Churches United, Rob?
She works for Catholic Charities.
Catholic Charities, yeah.
That's it, Catholic Charities, and she's somebody she's a very smart person. She's devoted her life to affordable housing, and she broke down the affordability, and in her breakdown, and you can take it for whatever it's worth, she believed that if you really get down to looking at the 50% preference that we have, and then you look at the overall affordability that she felt that at most 50 of the units would be truly affordable to the people in our community. So I just want to mention that, just because not everybody was at the public hearing. Anyway, we are having a discussion now of.
I'd like to know, I don't understand, sorry. Del, what are the conditions? There's a motion, yes, with conditions. What are the conditions?
Well, that's why I asked if everybody had a chance to read these conditions, which were circulated to all of the committee.
Can I offer to read a summary of them, and then?
I think we have to have, that's why I said circulated, because we can't vote on a summary of conditions. I think it's important.
Or I could read them verbatim. I mean, they're around 10.
I mean, I know that this list that Katie and Stephen prepared was circulated. I don't know if people have, if everybody on the committee read them, and I think that we can't vote on conditions if we don't know what conditions, what the specifics are.
I think the public needs to know what those conditions are too. So I think we need to either post them or read them.
Also, Dale, can I say something? Because I read the condition, but definitely it's fair enough. Probably, if people didn't, they should. I recognize that many of the conditions are very valuable. They're all valuable. The only things I feel uncomfortable with, and I understand, for different reasons, it seems that this is already a done deal in many ways, generally for many organizations that They say they represent the community, coalition of the coalition. And of course, it seems to me that everybody wants a slice of the cake. I recognize that the trees, they do what they are supposed to do. They make money, they are developer. I believe what is disturbing to me is that nobody is saying anything, and we ready, in name of affordable house, especially in name of so many other things, we're ready to say, yeah, we're not questioning what a large part of the community has concern, which is the scale of this building. Nobody's questioning what any expert will question, because the result we don't know in the long term, the transformative power that building architectural organism of this scale, an organism I call it, they are called that way because they create a system, they are system, what happens when they come into the community. That is not determinable. Honestly, I don't like all the determination. MTA says there is no impact, and this is not about infrastructure. It is definitely about infrastructure. We don't need to implant infrastructure. It's too late. The infrastructure are done what we have, and also I heard people talking about Amazon. And you know, we don't even know. What I know that there are those like large, enormous building which can be well designed architecturally. I may even like it, but in context, we're talking about contextualism. I believe this is a major concern. What this trigger is not who reside there in the building, is the dynamic, what they will produce. You know, it's definitely is going to have adverse effect on the community. We should really start thinking about for the future, looking ahead, how we're going to produce affordable house, which is something we really need, and we could be far more effective. I believe, I don't know, I feel that those are my input.
I would like to add one more thing. We have spoken many times about how precious our dwindling manufacturing zoning is. And the community board has confirmed that we should be loath to give up any more manufacturing zoning. And I'm concerned that we would actually vote yes with conditions when we're actually giving up a very, very, what is supposed to be, allegedly feel is something precious that needs to be preserved. And if we are not going to be very, very clear on how important it is, how important these manufacturing sites are, and how much we require of a developer in order to give it up, then where are we going? Then have we just given up on that? Then what about the next
There's a letter from Evergreen about the manufacturing aspects of the project. I think they're an authority on manufacturing, and they weighed in on it.
No, they did not. They said that because there is no manufacturing, they are not weighing in. Then, of course, they did say that Trees is a very admirable organization, but they specifically said they would not weigh in.
And also, Dale, to support what you were saying, because of course that doesn't mean that we're going to have a factory there, because of the assumption that a rezoning and the exchange, we're going to get some affordable housing exchange and as half the value of this land, okay? If we would have taken out this possibility, the value of this land would have been something different, and we do not know that something else could exist there. And I don't want to think about what, but I want to say, just to make an example, to be a large indoor market, which could include a park and thousands of different vendors, all the things that city planning says they want to bring food. We don't have infrastructure of that type. And again, I take it out. It was just to say, we do not know. If the price wasn't inflated by the potentiality, by the fact that we will vote because we're going to get some affordable housing in exchange, we could have other possibility. Who knows if even Amazon or a Costco could bring something valuable to the community. All the things we have been listening, employment, even access to the waterfront, who knows? We do not know.
I couldn't agree more, Sante.
And based on that, And based on that, I believe it's kind of what are we doing? But definitely many organizations have made some deal and support very valuable. I know many, they've been working for decades in the community, but that's what they do. They want to achieve something, but they don't go and they don't look at things holistically. And I want to distance myself from that. And I have no view. I don't live there. None of that. I'm not affiliated with anybody. I'm trying to be objective, really. And I ask you to be objective, really. That's all.
So I'd like to make a point that I feel that on this board that I feel as if I want to be a representative, to represent the community at large when possible. I feel that there are people who do want this project because of the affordable housing, because of the park. And I feel that there are people who don't want it for good reasons also. I think that there are both of those sides. And I feel that both of those have validity, and so that we need to make some kind of accommodation for both. I'd like to point out that for Transmitter Park building, that was a no with conditions. And we got all those conditions, including the wall. And including the wall that was put there and including the setback by, what was it, 24 feet, which both which were huge asks and that we got. And I believe that the no, they still did get the rezoning that the variance that they requested. And I think that no was a really good tool for that. I'd also just like to point out that there were some conditions which were not in the chat that Steve put in because he says probably the character limit was met to the limit. Yeah, so that's why I really think that we should vote down this yes with conditions, because I do believe that the no with conditions doesn't mean that the project is a no. It just means that we will have more weight on those conditions.
I'd like to dovetail on what Katie just said.
I agree with you, Katie. I agree.
Insofar as with the affordability, I really believe that we have a civic responsibility to our community. So we're not speaking on behalf of ourselves. We're speaking on behalf of, all of the people that some didn't make it last Wednesday, but just in general, understanding the context of our community after the 2005 rezoning. And in that discussion, we also are negotiating for our community. So to accept a project at 25% affordability when 75% of it is going to be the most expensive rentals, it doesn't work for affordability. So it's not that, I can't remember who in the chat box said, well, 25% is good. It's not when it's in a balance with that much super expensive rentals. It doesn't work like that. So I think if it is that you're an affordable housing activist, you have to ask for more. And you have a civic responsibility, in my opinion, as being a part of this board to do that.
So I think we should accept the condition to make it more affordable, and then you can, get down in the math.
Madam Chair, listen, so Mike,
Wait, Rob, yes.
there's a list of people that want to speak. Mike, I know this is correct, if we can just go with the list of people that are ready to go. I appreciate that.
Okay, so who is it asking to speak?
Keith, I would like to at some point.
And I'll go after Keith on stack.
Okay, and Rob, are you going to speak?
After Keith.
Yep. So we also, I think, need to make the point that we need to learn from the mistakes of the past. And I'll go back to what I said, last week, that ultimately this is a failure of city planning and a failure to look broadly at a neighborhood and to look at each development one by one. But look at the 05 rezoning that tried to deal with affordability. Some of us live in buildings that have affordability components. The section of buildings that make up this area, a lot of them have affordable components. It hasn't worked. It's only gotten more wealthy, less diverse. It has not solved the problem in the neighborhood, and 25% isn't going to solve it. I think someone who is advocating for this made some point about this area being 60%, white, and this will help. It's not going to help when 75% of its market rate. It's just not going to solve the problem that people really are facing for affordability. Apartments, as Rob pointed out last week, that are going for $7,000 to $10,000 a month do not ultimately solve for affordability. I am on a homeless services board. I totally understand affordability as a need to address homelessness and at many, many levels. I am in full favor of it, but it needs to be much better thought out, and it cannot be developer profit driven. It has to, come first from city planning that then figures out a way to balance that against profitability. And this is just not going to cut it from an affordability perspective. I think there are a lot of different options that this space could be used for that still allow for some waterfront esplanade that could be creative industry city type approaches, as Sante mentioned. I also question the park space. The size of it is just, of course it sounds great to have a park. If you talk about Domino, I like Domino. Keep in mind, there are still 3 buildings that are not done at Domino. They're going to bring thousands more people into that area. What is Domino going to look like in a couple of years? This park is going to be overrun by the people that are going to be in those buildings around it. And if you are talking about the climate change aspects of it, the EIS talks about a potential sea rise of 5 feet of water. What's left of that 3 acres after 5 feet of sea level rise? So I think we need to really think about these things in a strong way. I think there's a lot of positives to this plan, but the negatives that come along with it just overshadow it, in my view. I'll stop there.
All right, Rob, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo a lot of the understanding of affordable housing, right? We have been doing affordable housing for over 15 years in Williamsburg and understand the need, right? I represent an organization for over a decade. And that organization, not alone, got like supplements ago, Senator Kavanaugh has expressed really an expert on this 421A to say there is a way to do this without making those people, right? So we have to trust the representatives that are coming to the call as Senator.
Breaking up, Rob.
Oh, hold on. How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so just really like there is a resistance to this that comes from our representation in Albany that is saying to us that there is a way to meet the affordable that was already promised. I think that's important. A lot of us was here in 2014 when we heard 700 units of affordable was coming our way and we need to fast. So when people, not random, same developer comes and say, I want to do more and has not filled the pressure of people trying to get a project already.
Rob, we can't hear you.
You cannot? Sorry, I don't know. Come back to me and I'll get on Wi-Fi.
Okay. So let's see who else is asking. Steve, did you have your
Yeah,
hand up?
I just want to inject a little reminder that the lots to the east of River Ring, on the east side of River Street, where the now will be the Trader Joe's building, they're piggybacking and they're getting rezoned to M14. So just whatever, for what it's worth. So.
How's my sound now? Is that better for y'all?
Yes.
Yes,
Rob.
Just really in summary, it is, I know it feels weird to take a position. There's a reason why this is being tracked right now. There is there's a new representative on the call, and Lincoln Ressler, that literally a month after in January, he's already declaring 50% affordable housing. So I do think there is a rush to say, let's get it done with this crew, because it's going to work. It's going to be more progressive. We don't have to be part of this fact. We're trying to fast track.
You're breaking up again.
I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm breaking up, but just really, I'll put it in the chat if I'm breaking up. But really, I do want to know because I thought that was the understanding of what the today, the email with that. So I'll type it.
Okay, type it, because I can't really. Again, I agree that we have to try to look at both sides, but we also have the fact that we will be giving up a very a strategic manufacturing site, and I would hope that before we give that up, we really get something amazing in return. And I also think we really want to pay attention to the fact that over 7,000 people in the immediate vicinity have petitioned against the project.
Bill, who are these 7,000 people? I've heard about this petition, it's emails, there's no signatures, no addresses. I've seen handwritten letters from people in the neighborhood supporting it. And then there's some, I don't know, some online petition. I don't think that really passes muster.
Michael, that's not a fair characterization. There have been lots of people that have written into this committee. What you've seen is a bunch of handwritten letters that have been solicited by Two Trees staff. Okay, and there have been 7,000 signatures that have been submitted, and you can go and look at them. There are also emails. You can go and look at the petition if you'd like.
There's petitions, Michael. There's a petition.
And it's available online, and you can see who signed it.
And they have addresses, and I mean, how do I know these aren't, Russian troll bots? I mean,
you don't know any more than you know whether the Two Trees letters are real people either, because you're not going out there and verifying that either, are you, Michael? Are you spending the time walking around the neighborhood?
You know what? We're not going to waste time on whether these are Russian troll bots. Michael Andrews, I think you want to say something.
Yeah, I do. So I was at the hearing last week, and I have to say I was taken by the fact that it was not overwhelmingly in any way against. It was actually almost 2-to-1 in support as far as people who actually stood up to the mic. I was taken by the fact that La Sures, that St. Nick's, that the North Brooklyn Development Corporation, that the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce, and the Billion Oyster Project were all willing to publicly support the project. These are all people who I know in the neighborhood who've been important and involved people. These are not people who are thoughtless and who are looking to make the neighborhood worse. And so I would suggest that we take those people's advocacy of this project seriously. And I would also say, as far as that petition goes, I mean, I understand there's a petition, and I understand there's almost 8,000 names on it, but it is not in any way vetted to be anybody in our neighborhood. A change.org petition can be signed by anybody in the world to give them an address. So I think it's only fair to be clear about what that actually is as well. So that's really all I have to say about it. But I would say take the people who have supported this project represent many thousands of units of affordable housing in our neighborhood. Have been in the game for 40 years, and I think we shouldn't take their support of this lightly.
Okay.
So I want to chime in. It's almost 9:30, and I love you guys, and I love Brooklyn, but I'm just getting really tired, and I want to move this process forward. Michael, I hear what you have to say, and I really would like to come to some sort of resolution and a vote. If I can make a motion to vote on this, if we can move this process forward,
Discussion can't be
all night, but this is, let's figure out what's next, you guys, as a community and as neighbors.
I agree with Allison.
I think Robert's Rules of Order maintain that discussion needs to happen before a vote, and that we need to, and I really believe that we need to this has already been rushed through, okay? We actually, Two Trees.
Maybe it hasn't though. If you think about
let me just finish, please.
Participated in multiple meetings that we've been at. I was in person at the public hearing. We've had 3 hours of deliberation. I just want to get to the point.
I'm not going to stop until you let me speak. I appreciate that you're tired. I appreciate we're all tired. And I frankly think we need to deal with city planning to hope that they don't do this to us next year, because it's absolutely unfair that they just decided to throw everything at us at the so that we wouldn't have a summer, or hoping that a lot of us would be off for the summer. But this is not this project will change the character of this neighborhood and this whole area forever. And I understand St. Nick's and all these organizations are in favor, but St. Nick's is going to make a lot of money if this project goes through. They will be the managing agent for the affordables, and the other organizations that have gone with them for their reasons. but we, it is up to this committee to look to see, again, if you're going to just give away this manufacturing zoning, then be very careful about wanting to deny any future applications for that, to change manufacturing to residential. This is allegedly, this board holds these manufacturing sites as being precious, and frankly, I think that, as I know I'm just repeating myself. If we're going to give this up, there had better be really clear reasons to do so. And I think personally, 25% affordable, where we only get 50% of a preference anyway, and that's still not guaranteed, is not going to help. Is only going to continue the gentrification. As one of the people said who testified in favor of the project, who came from Coney Island, this is going to be the place to be. Please, it's going to be such fun. You are going to be, and he was speaking in favor of the project, you are going to be inundated with people from all over the place. Please do it, because it's going to be fun. That was someone who testified at the.
Well, I just want to reply to this. You live in one of the most desirable neighborhoods, not only in New York City or New York State, but the entire world. People who come to New York, and guess what? They're coming here to Williamsburg. I'm a resident, I'm your neighbor, I live here, and I understand, I don't know what we're testing with the manufacturing site too. I think we definitely need to throw out some red flags with that, and the grass isn't always greener, we know that, and unfortunately sometimes it's brown. So I don't want to get ourselves stuck into a sticky situation where we're saying we could have and we should have, right? I think that there are a lot of conditions that need to go into what we're doing. I have heard all of the neighbors. I think lots of people have had plenty of time to speak. We've had a ton of time to deliberate. The community's voices have been heard, along with the South Side and some of the other people like Los Suarez and St. Nick's Alliance that we've all seen the correspondence on. I think tonight, and again, this doesn't have to be about being tired or any of that. It's about moving this conversation forward, moving this community forward for one way or another, and working collectively, hand in hand with our neighbors to make this place better, not only for us, because we all live here, but for all of the people who want to think of Williamsburg as one of the most desirable places in the world to live and visit. We're the lucky ones here. Let's take action. To Maria's point, let's take the reins in a little bit, right? How are we going to do that if we're not going to work with a lot of the projects that are already at play? Again, not trying to rush this along, but we're at the 3-hour mark now of this meeting, and I think all of us are very committed and dedicated and passionate about this neighborhood, but let's move this forward. Let's not do the he said, she said. Let's make some decisions and get to the point so that we could all move forward collectively as CB1.
Allison, with all due respect, I've been on committee calls that have gone till 10:30, 11:30, and almost midnight here. So let's not pretend that
Keith, I was on those same calls with you. I was on those same calls with you. I'm not pretending anything.
Allison, I let you finish. I let you finish, and you can let me speak. Allison, I let you finish, and you can let me speak, please. We have all been on late calls.
Keith, I heard you speak last week. I heard you speak at the CB1 meeting before.
Excuse me.
I've heard you.
I don't care.
You've
I am
never
a
heard
member
my
of this.
voice before.
I am a member of this committee, and I am allowed to respond to you. You can then choose to respond afterwards. That's how it works. Okay.
Alison, you cannot rush. You're rushing a process.
I sit here on these meetings cooking my children dinner every single time. This is not convenient for me, right? I have to feed my children who I have on these nights to deal with these meetings. Okay, Allison.
I've spent more FaceTime on this meeting than you have tonight. I think it's unfair to say that you haven't been heard when you speak repeatedly as people. It's not about rushing.
Everyone has the right
to about working collectively.
Last week,
Allison, Pete, everyone, I'm running the meeting, like it or not. Now, by the way, this meeting may have gone on for 3 hours, but not on River Ring. You make a commitment when you join this committee And the commitment, unfortunately, sometimes involves a long meeting. Now, we have not been on the River Ring that long, but we have spent quite a lot of time arguing back and forth over who's, you know, whether we're rushing it or not rushing it, and who's more inconvenienced. Do we have any more comments that anyone wants to make?
I just wanted to
The
speak
only
real
last
quick.
comment is to make a motion. I don't know the next
The motion
process of
is
that.
already on the floor. We're in discussion.
Okay, so then I second the motion. Let's get going, guys.
No,
Let's
there
move it.
was
Mr.
no
Allison,
control.
resign.
Can I
Resign if
speak?
this is your approach.
Sante, I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
You're yelling at me, but you're not saying anything. You're muted, Sante. So if you'd like to have a conversation, I'm happy to. But I see a lot of screaming people at each other, and that's no way for a
Don't
community.
rush the
I joined the
process.
community board
Let
just like you because
everybody
we all
have a
care.
discussion. But let
Okay.
everybody have a discussion. Just
Okay.
let's raise your
Just,
hand.
just for, I'm unclear of the motion. Let me just speak. There was an introduction by Steve with his recommendations that I thought was the motion, and then it was a second conversation about it, and then there was someone entered. I heard two motions. I thought I heard a motion from Steve with no, then I heard another motion. So we've been in discussion. It is up to the chair. The chair is the one that recognizes the motion. So I will go back to the chair who runs this meeting. Are we in discussion? Are we talking? Or has there been a motion by Steve to deny with conditions, Madam Chair?
We are in discussion.
Right.
I would like to register again. I've been making the motion to accept with conditions.
And I'm on my phone, by the way.
But Michael, previous to that motion, Steve had made a motion, had presented an email with a note of conditions.
He did not make a motion.
You didn't let him finish because you didn't let him finish. You jumped in. He was presenting it with the conditions. We were having a discussion about what the motion about you countered his view that it should be no with the conditions. That's what happened.
No, that's not true.
That's not true. Steve did not.
Excuse me, guys. Dell, are you still at the meeting? Did we lose the chair?
Can you
Dell?
hear me? Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, Dell. Just want to make sure you're still here because you disappeared there for a while. Thank you.
I'm on my phone. Doug is trying to get me back in again. So,
I'd like to make a comment.
so can you hear me now?
That we hear you.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm on the phone and I got knocked off a computer again. Does anyone have anything they want to discuss?
Yes, please. Again, I've had my hand up. I guess nobody's looking. I really would just
Karen, I'm looking, but no one is listening.
Nobody's listening. We're supposed to go in order and people are just jumping in. It's not fair now. First of all, we're in discussion. So there should be recommendations. If I'm not correct, please let me know. If we are in discussion on the motion, okay, that was presented in second, then we should be making additional recommendations. Okay, the list that Steve had given the committee, they're great recommendations. I think that's what we need to be concentrating on. If there are additional recommendations, and then we could vote down what was presented, okay, and then if you want to vote no, but we have to move this forward. I appreciated the senator for explaining some of which we did not understand of 2 trees about the affordable housing and why they didn't fill their units. But now we need to start talking about what additional recommendations, or if we are going to vote this down, this motion that's on the floor, and we're going to vote no, it's a statement. It's a statement of why we're voting no. Historically, This committee has always voted yes with recommendations from what I understand, because no with recommendations means nothing. They don't need to listen to our recommendation because of the fact that we voted against the proposal. So if our elected officials want to take up those recommendations, either yes or no, they would lift those recommendations and move it forward. So I need clarification from the chair, because historically we have voted yes with recommendations. So that's all I want to say. But please, regardless, let's get additional recommendations and let's go over what we're presenting.
Not in. Gotta try to get me back in, huh? Am I back? Okay.
We can hear you, Dell.
So Del, you didn't hear anything?
While we're waiting for Dell, I hope it's okay if I
I'm
say
back now.
something.
So,
I hope I'm back. I think I am.
Oh, you're back. Did you
Okay,
hear
great.
Karen?
Thank you. Thank you.
Del, did you hear anything that I said?
No, I'm sorry, Karen. I heard that. No, because I
All
was.
right, short version is, regardless, we need to move forward. We need to go over the current recommendations that were on the floor if we're in discussion. If the committee needs to add to and from, then if we should just move forward with what was on the floor, either voted down. But I think it's important that we look at the recommendations that Steve and Katie put together. And if there's anything additional that we need to add to that, we need to do it now. Let's move forward.
Yes, I agree. So it's, as I said,
on conditions, unless we know what the conditions are.
Karen, can you repeat the part about the precedent that the committee has historically voted yes with conditions?
Yes, Del, historically, we have voted yes with conditions. It was always my understanding that when we vote no with recommendations, that it means nothing. Yes with recommendations sticks. So I want clarification of no with recommendations, because essentially we're voting against it, so they don't need to look at our recommendations.
Can we?
That Richard, is Richard Barrett still here?
Yes, I am.
Would you weigh in on this? Would you mind?
So I don't get caught up into why a yes or no. I'm more interested in the recommendations that you make. Usually if there's more complications with the recommendations, they sometimes tend to go towards a no. If the developer is working more closely, you might tend to see more yeses. If you find a developer totally put off by, the board's comments, boards tend to not be cooperative and vote yes when there's a lot of distance made by the developers. I don't get caught up into whether yes or no. I want to learn by the conditions.
So the yes and no doesn't matter?
Jerry, would you
No,
mind?
doesn't matter. It's the conditions that matter?
The conditions are informative.
Jerry, would you mind? Would you mind weighing in if you have any opinion on the value of a no versus a yes with conditions?
I think I'll yield to Richard on this.
Adele, this is
At the
Benjamin.
Greenpoint Williamsburg plan, there was no with conditions, right? Because probably back then there was less feeling that the administration was listening. That's probably, well, I can't say I model all your recommendations, but I believe that was a no with conditions because there was a lot of feeling like there was not a lot of responsibility back then. So you go with whatever comfort level you have, but I think the most important thing is conditions. You know, voting yes doesn't tell us what you think unless you make statements. Voting no, unless you submit it with statements, doesn't really help us. Conditions help us learn. Whatever way you want to go, yes or no, it just helping to really inform through your conditions.
Did I hear Ben? Is this Ben Solinger?
Yeah.
Ben, please. Yes.
No, I just want to, I just chime in just to back up what Richard said. It's really those conditions. You know, the yes and the no give a clue, but you really need to do with what you guys think is right, and the more specific and the more accurate the conditions are, the better for us to make decisions down the road. So that's I would just agree with Richard is all I want to say, and I appreciate the lively discussion tonight, and it is an important topic. So.
My worry is that any version of no sends the signal to the developer, take a hike. And you could say, take a hike, period, full stop, or you could say, take a hike. Oh, but if you give us X, Y, Z, and ABC, then we'll be friends and you can have what you want.
The developer
I'm
is
pretty
on.
sure that they spent 150 million on the site, so they're not just going to take a hike. I know that they like to threaten us with an Amazon warehouse, although none of them exist on the Brooklyn waterfront. But I don't think that they're necessarily going to walk out. I think if we say no, we have a stronger position. And I think for anyone who cares about more affordable housing or green space, regardless of whether you want the project or not, I think it's a stronger position with no. But I think that the idea that a developer with this much in the game would walk out right now, I think is unrealistic.
And there are two representatives from the developer on the call who are listening in to the conversation and would understand then the significance of the vote one way or the other.
Trina wants to say something.
I just want to point out what Katie had pointed out earlier, which is the development that is directly behind Transmitter Park. The community board voted no with conditions, and the conditions were met by the developer, and the conditions were pretty stringent. I mean, most of the conditions were.
Yeah,
And
they,
so
they were
there
taken
is a
seriously.
precedent.
Yep. I personally think no with conditions in this situation is more powerful.
I agree.
I agree with that. I agree.
I agree.
Disagree.
Okay, but again, the motion is on the floor. Shouldn't we be going over conditions? Again, we could.
Madam Chair, Karen keeps
Can we
repeating that
please-
over and over again. Madam Chair,
But can we
you
look
are
at
the
the
chair of the
conditions,
meeting.
Rob?
What,
Rob,
Karen?
can we agree on the conditions?
I
What-
don't know what motion has been heard by the chair, Madam Chair. Very early on, within 20 seconds, 20 seconds into this meeting, someone made a motion. I heard two motions 20 seconds into the meeting. What motion are we talking about? Because what I thought this meeting began with was Steve Chester going point by point with a motion. I'm hearing a lot of no's, but Madam Chair, what is what you recognize as the chair?
Well, the first motion I thought I heard was that these conditions were being proposed to be attached to a no.
No, yes.
That's what I heard.
And was that
The
motion
meeting is
seconded?
being recorded. Do we have to go back on the video?
We can go, Maria. We can go back on the videotape. This
No,
whole
I mean,
meeting
I'm serious,
began
because if there's
with Steve.
confusion-
Steve
If there's
spoke
confusion, we
first.
gotta get this right. We
That's
gotta
fine.
get this right.
I
This
heard
is a
very
joke.
clearly. Steve entered an email. He was going through his motions, and Katie went second. We were entertaining the no motion, and then Michael went through.
To that, and he was just going.
Karen,
over-
I keep hearing you over and over and over again. If we could just have there's one chair. The chair is the one that recognizes the meeting.
Does everyone know what the conditions are? I've been asking this since the very beginning. Have you all?
Yes, yes, the
Yes.
conditions were
Yeah,
mailed out.
we saw it and that we mailed out. We read them. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Steve
So
sent them out.
know
Yeah.
the conditions now.
Thank you.
Conditions are known.
The only question is what that I can see right now is whether we vote no with the conditions or yes with the conditions.
Are we agreeing blanketly to the conditions that Steve has
I
laid
haven't
out?
heard any opposition to the conditions.
Yeah, they're pretty strong. I don't think there's been a major arguments on the conditions. The conditions are incredibly strong.
I think we decide either no with conditions or yes with conditions.
What
Yeah,
conditions?
listen to me. I have a
Can we
question.
review the conditions,
So, I heard Steve make a motion, and then I don't know that there was an opportunity for it to be seconded. So Steve, was that a motion that you made?
Oh, I have a question. Would you like to, do we vote and talk about the conditions, or would you like us to have the open forum of what we'd like to see with the conditions before the vote?
No one objected to any of the conditions. So if we vote, we vote either no with the conditions or yes with the conditions.
And for the sake of the greater board, is it helpful to know which of those conditions that we stand for or against, or really for?
Are you now saying you want to go, I've been asking this since the beginning. Does anyone have anything that wants?
Yes, conditions. I think there needs to be definite conditions with the vote, for sure.
Allison, have you read the conditions?
Yes, absolutely. I've kept in touch with all correspondence of every email from CD1.
So what I don't understand.
What I'm here to say is, like, I certainly think the buildings are way too high. So that's where I stand, is on the height condition. So is it a blanket statement or not? That's what I want. That's what I'm asking you. For example, my vote is I vote yes with the conditions that 2 trees is under the impression that there will be a severe reduction in the level of the buildings so that they at least are a little bit closer to what the rest of the building has.
Okay, so here we're gonna go do this. Because right now, Steve made a motion to vote no with these conditions, all of these conditions.
I second that motion from Steve from the beginning.
That's seconded. Let's take
I
a.
never heard
Didn't
Steve
make a
say that he was making a
motion,
motion.
Madam Chair. He didn't
I
make
never
the
heard him say he was
motion.
making a motion.
Yeah, absolutely. He introduced his motion and he sent
No,
the email with
no.
the motion. He started
Rob,
the meeting
you
with the
lied.
motion.
Dell
You
asked
lied.
He
him
made a
to go over the
recommendation. I'm
conditions.
sorry, but he
Dell
said he's
asked him
making
to
a
go over the
recommendation of a
conditions.
no with these conditions. He didn't say, I'm making a motion. I've been listening. He said, these are the recommendations.
My
on this
neighbors, we're
letter
having
that
a lot
was
of
drafted
technical
by Steve
problems.
and
So
Katie Napotarski. So we got to be clear on this.
Just like Steve. We're not just like Steve. Awesome.
I can't hear you, Steve. You're muted.
Yeah, my intention was to make the motion.
Intention.
Your intention, no.
Yeah.
Because he was
Let
interrupted.
me see this meeting
I
recording.
was in the middle of doing, yes,
I
it
wanna
was
see this because
interrupted, so.
I'm going to be clear. I'm not going to do anything that I'm unclear about.
When there's unclarity, the chair provides the clarity. It's in any chair in CB1. So, Madam Chair, you can provide the clarity.
My understanding was Steve was making a motion that we would vote no because of the condition.
Just want to say, but he's saying it was an intention. He didn't make it. Just for clarity.
Okay, fine. So how do we want, so do you want to then, it doesn't matter. We can vote either way. So then another motion was made that we vote yes. So we can do a roll call on that. I personally will vote against that because I think we should vote no, but we can, if that's how you will all feel better, one way or another.
I don't feel that, not all of us, I don't feel better about that. Steve began the meeting. There's many other people that felt that way too. And then Steve was interrupted. He was interrupted within 2 minutes. He was interrupted with his presentation.
Yeah, right. I don't think that that's appropriate, right? I mean, the person's in the middle of making a motion and stating the conditions. We're talking about them, and then somebody else jumps in and makes a motion to thwart that. Is that how we're going to run these meetings?
So Steve, why don't you say the words? Rob will second it. We will vote, and if the majority of the committee votes yes, then they vote yes. If they vote no, then we go to voting yes, or voting whatever it is, and whatever motion anybody wants to make.
That's fair.
I make a motion.
Something
to
is
recommend-
unclear to me. Can I ask for a specific? If somebody want to vote no because he's against the rezoning as a concept, right? That's what you mentioned before. You mentioned the industrial space. If you, how do you vote? Because the moment you vote no, you are voting with condition, which is accepting the proposal with additional conditions. But
No,
what about if you want?
No, if you vote, that's not what a no vote means.
No. If you're voting no with conditions, you're voting no unless they meet all of these conditions. If they don't meet all of these conditions, it's no.
Yeah, but what about a vote? It says no entirely to the rezoning.
So, Sante, if you want to do that, then you risk not being a part of the no vote, but you can do whatever you want.
Just to clarify, if you put out a yes vote first and that gets turned down, and then you put out a no with conditions, people who vote against no with conditions aren't necessarily saying yes. They may also be against the project in its totality. So if
Hey,
a
thank
no
you,
with
Richard.
condition fails, it could be because of people wanting to vote no, period.
Okay, thank you, Richard.
You'll learn by conducting the vote.
Okay. So, Rob, you've seconded Steve's motion?
Oh, wait, I need to make.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Jerry, roll call. This is for no with conditions.
Can I get a clarification, Simon?
Yes, Simon.
Okay, my question is, we're going for yes, no, or no vote?
We're going for no with conditions. So no.
Is the conditions about the height?
The conditions have to be read.
Read the conditions, Steve. You have to reread the
The motion has to be presented in its entirety. There are members of the public present at this meeting that are not privy to the document that was sent out in the email. So the resolution has to be presented in its entirety, please.
Okay.
So
Can I also just clarify, Del?
yes. Katie, I can't hear you. I think you're.
Steve, could you read the motion? There's a motion on the floor, please. Could you read the motion? Let's get on with this.
Yes.
Michelle allowed me to say something. I just want to clarify. My mic was off because Simon just asked a really important
Maybe you should wait to hear the motion before you have any further questions.
No, I just want to clarify that no with conditions doesn't mean that one is against the project. It is just giving a heavy weight to those conditions. That's as I understand it. I just want to clarify because Simon asked.
Maria, you're shaking your head no, but I think
Because Richard Barrett just said that if you're voting no, that you could also be part of the group that is totally against the project. What in totality? I am listening very carefully. I'm not trying to editorialize. I am listening very carefully.
Richard, why don't you repeat it one more time, Richard?
Okay. So if the motion is no with conditions, somebody who votes against that could be wanting the project with conditions favorably, and they could also be totally against the project. So you could have both extremes. If you don't believe it should be no with conditions because you want it yes with conditions, or you don't want it at all, you're probably voting the same way to try to get a different motion put on the floor, such as either yes with conditions or totally no.
But the same thing could be said for yes with conditions. Somebody could vote no against yes with conditions because they're voting against the yes.
Right, but right now you're talking about no with conditions first. So if you want it to be yes with conditions and you choose to vote against a no with conditions, you might vote the same as someone who wants to say, no, I don't want the project, right? Your vote is still the same, even though you have different views. But you still have to replace that motion with a new motion, such as a yes with conditions or totally a no or whatever else someone else can come up with.
Right.
Richard.
Okay, so Steve, would you please read the full motion?
Okay. The motion is to recommend no to the River Ring rezoning, which includes all of the zoning map changes, text amendments, special permits, with the following conditions. Two Trees must rent all affordable housing units in their 1 South First Street development to honor prior community affordable housing commitments. Reduce total number of apartment units in the project by 33% to reduce the anticipated increased load on existing overcapacity on subway transit, vehicle traffic, pedestrian traffic, wastewater, and with street sanitation, storage, collection, and open space. Increase the number of total affordable units to 50% to support deeper diversity and affordable living in the neighborhood. 60% of affordable units must be 2 and 3 bedroom units to encourage long-term family occupancy. Within all affordable units, 1 bedroom must be a minimum of 128 square feet to comfortably accommodate bedroom furniture, a closet, and efficient movement throughout the room. The City of New York must include funding for the full completion of Bushwick Inlet Park in their 10-year capital plan, so the fully operational park can help mitigate the existing severe local open space deficiencies that will persist if this project is built out, and the massive population increase with the quantity of current and future local waterfront housing developments. The project must use a fossil-free energy source such as a geothermal heat loop system instead of a natural gas-reliant system for heating, which will work to have the project more aggressively meet the challenging but critical goals of the New York City Climate Protection Act, Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, and those set by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Redesign the towers so they are significantly less obtrusive and oppressive in feel and fit more contextually with nearby structures and better connect with the historical fabric of the neighborhood. Two Trees must negotiate in good faith with the New York City and vicinity District Council of Carpenters to ensure the project adheres to the safest and best construction work practices. Two Trees must negotiate in good faith with local workforce organizations in order to provide service jobs for local job seekers. Two Trees must provide funding in perpetuity for a local independent agency organization to oversee and enforce rental fees and increases of affordable and market rate apartments. Two Trees and the City of New York must present and execute a plan to manage the steadily increasing volume of street trash that has come with the incredible volume of additional area residents that the project will exasperate. Before granting any rezoning, Two Trees must present community facility architectural plans which verify that the YMCA facility will serve the stated purpose and promise of serving both the Williamsburg and Greenpoint communities, as well as 250 school children annually. It must show that the size and location of the facility elements, including pool, locker rooms, saunas, facility pool access, including elevator, pool depth and lane width, lifeguards station, staging area, and pool equipment, weight rooms, full gym arena, and exercise rooms are adequate as a full-service facility for the communities. The community facility must be built out and in operation before the building can be occupied as a rental. That's it.
Okay, roll call, please.
We need a second.
Oh, Rob.
I second.
Rob Solano, second.
I would, Dell, can I say something really quickly? That's okay?
We're voting now.
Okay.
A no vote is in favor of the resolution, which is no with conditions. Chair Teague.
Wait, can you say it again, please?
If you vote yes, you are supporting a no vote with conditions.
Yeah, I think that's different.
Do you understand?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
if
you
you're
said
in
no
favor,
the first time.
Yeah,
But
you
it's
said no the
yes.
first
Yes
time.
is supporting a no
Chair
recommendation.
Teague.
Yes supports Steve's motion.
Chair Teague.
Yes.
Maria Vieira.
No.
Trina McKeever.
Yes.
Stephen Chesler.
Yes.
Erin Drinkwater.
Yes.
Moisha Indig.
I vote for yes. I vote for yes with conditions.
Oh, then you're voting against it, then you're voting no.
Yes.
How do you vote, Mr. Indig?
I think it doesn't make sense to vote this no with conditions. So whatever makes sense.
How do you vote, Mr. Indig? Yes, no, or abstain?
I don't know what yes means.
Yes vote supports the motion that's on the floor to oppose the application with conditions.
I vote for no because I didn't think we should vote for
Thank
yes
you,
with
sir.
conditions.
Mrs. Kaminsky,
No.
Abraham Leibovitz, Sante, Abraham Leibovitz.
No.
Thank you. Sante Maselli.
Sorry, yes, it is not clear to me.
Yes, no, or abstention, Mr. Maselli.
Can you say it again? Because my line was bad, it was interrupted.
No or abstention.
No, it means against the...
Committee's recommendation that's currently on the floor is to vote no with conditions.
Abstention.
To vote yes, you support the committee's recommendation.
Abstention.
Abstention, so noted. Rabbi Niederman.
Actually, you know what? I vote
Rabbi
yes.
Niederman.
I vote yes. I recall my vote. Vote yes.
No.
Vote yes, Jerry.
So noted. Karen Nieves.
No, because of the process.
Thank you. Isaac Sofer. Robert Solano.
Yes.
William Vega. William Vega. No vote. Stephen Weidberg. Stephen Weidberg. No vote. Simon Weiser.
Jerry, do you hear me? I voted yes.
Yes for Mr. Vega. Stephen Weidberg. Simon Weiser.
Yes.
You vote yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Michael Andrews.
Michael, I think you were recusing.
Repeat, please.
I think Michael has to recuse himself.
Not Michael Andrews.
Michael Andrews.
Or does he?
No, I vote no.
Keith Berger.
Keith Berger's yes. Keith Berger is yes.
Corey Canton.
Yes.
Michael Kowachka.
No.
Katie Naplatarski.
Yes.
Allison Stone.
No.
I have to walk back this way.
Michael Andrews, it's my understanding you were going to recuse yourself because you're on the board of St. Nick's.
No, there is no agreement between St. Nick's and this development.
11 yes, 9 no, 0 abstention. The motion carries.
All right. Thank you very much. See you all on the 14th.
See you then.
Thank you, Del.
Good night. Thank you, Del.
Night, everybody.
Thank you, Del.
At least we didn't go to midnight.
Good night. Good night.
Bye.